This meeting will now come to order. Secretary, call the roll.
Yes. Mr. Brockway.
Here.
Mrs. Gaynor.
Here.
Mr. Kodama.
Here.
Mrs. Morello.
Here.
Mr. O'Brien.
Here.
Mr. Perry.
Present.
And Ms. Manja is absent.
Great. We will all stand. Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are now going to open the floor to public comment. We're going to wait a second until everybody signs in. How we're doing it now is that everybody is going to sign in, and I will recognize you, and then please stand, state your name, your address, and make your comment. I just want to emphasize this is the only opportunity tonight to make a public comment. You can stand and state your name even though we don't have the list yet. Yes.
Okay.
Hi.
I'm Julie Lobby. I live at 505 York Road, so I'm a Blythe Park parent. I welcome the new school year, but I have two questions. First, in terms of the new lunch policy that's signing in and signing out for lunch. I guess I just, a month ago, got elected to PTA, so I've been hearing a lot from parents more. And to get right to the point, what is the circumstances for the kids going back in? Because Leasley is one way during the school day. And say on a Tuesday, garbage day, IEP meetings going on, you have a lot of extra staff in the building. Substitute cards are there. And basically only the north side of Leasley is really available. So the kids have to enter in by the office. And are they allowed to enter until you find a parking spot to go in? Or you have to be, I walk 99% of the time because I live down in York. But there's parents that were just talking in the park, like, how are they going to do this? If they have a kid in the car, it's raining, the kid wants to be close to the door. Can the kid enter the building, say at 12:25, and then when the parent finally finds a spot at 12:30? Or whenever, because people don't always get right in their car and leave. What's the policy? Because the kids, they were saying like how the kids don't want to get tardies. Is there leniency in that? One reason I'm bringing that up also is, if you haven't heard, you will, that the York Road will be torn up for a new water main break. Finally, after all 7 breaks, they're going to fix it. So in the next few weeks, the road's going to be torn up. These will, I think, eventually be torn up. You know, there's only two places to park, extreme ends of the school. You're going to have construction equipment. Is there going to be leniency that if you get there at 12:36 and you got kids running across your construction, are these two kids going to say, you're late, it's 12:35 in 1 second? Or is there going to be some, because 4th, 5th grade, there is, you know, I heard how they're very strict. So just to have you guys think about this.
Okay.
Because I heard a lot at the playground in the last 48 hours. So I wasn't planning on coming to it. They asked me to come and just, give you a heads up on, there's quite a few that does have new babies. They said I have to take the stroller out, I have to carry this out, I gotta sign them in. My kid's gonna be late. And, people I think are pretty prompt at life. But we don't want that changing their record or being penalized.
That's a fair question, and we'll get an answer to you within 48 hours.
Okay.
Dr. Sharma Lewis, I have your email address, and that's why we have the sign-in sheet, and so respond to you.
And quickly, the other point, I saw the email today for the construction at Blythe, and I think there's an inspection tomorrow. What's happening on, say, Friday when the rest of it? Is there another inspection that's going to occur prior to Monday before teachers and kids are there?
We'll have an update from our owner's representative tonight to figure out what the next steps will be and when everything will be finished.
Okay.
So your answer will be awaiting you tonight, and
Okay.
Dr. Sharma Lewis can include that in her response to you for the other question.
It really doesn't give the teachers a lot of time. As a teacher for 15 years, that doesn't, I know I've been home a long time, but it doesn't give you a lot of time to prepare for your classroom, especially little kids. And like you can say, go write a 5-paragraph essay. you need to have, the teachers need time to make it look nice, but they don't have that extra time with little kids.
No, I understand. I
Okay.
understand. It'll be crunch time for sure.
Yeah, and PJ's offered to help, and Mr. Claiborne's aware of it, I think, with the teachers, but just that our teachers have enough time, not that they're working till midnight for 3 days trying to get their stuff done, you know, so they're, you know, they should be allowed adequate time, like last year, I think the teachers were allowed. So our teachers have time to do their stuff.
That's a fair question.
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, the chair now recognizes Mary Jo Roebling.
So I'm Mary Jo Roebling, 133 Herrick. And first of all, I want to say thank you for I've noticed there's been a real effort and improved communication this summer, and I know I speak for a lot of parents when I say thank you for that. I guess I have a question, and maybe the owner's rep was going to address this tonight anyway, but if not, I don't know if it can be addressed during public comment response, which I'm really happy to see that on the agenda too. Thank you for that. So my question is, you know, my concern for a while has been this Hauser bump out, and I see that there is an application for an occupancy certificate on the agenda tonight, and I'm just wondering what kind of inspections have been done or will be done before the students return, and you know, what assurances can you give us that the proper inspections have been done or will be done? Because as we all remember, the proper inspections did not happen last year, and there were, you know, problems in that room. So what assurances can we have that that room has been properly inspected? Thank you.
Thank you. I anticipate that our owner's representative can answer that question. He's here somewhere. There you are. I'm sorry, in the front row. I was looking past you.
Yeah, and
Yes.
when I say properly inspected, I want to clarify that I mean more than just Mark Miller saying, I've looked at it and it looks okay.
Okay.
Because he did that last time and there were problems.
Okay. We'll get you an answer to that question, and Dr. Sharma Lewis will also respond to your question as well in writing. And I just wanted to clarify too, the response that we're doing now, because we changed things around, is going to be responding to questions from the previous meeting. So we'll also answer your questions at the following meeting, in addition to responding to you personally.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm still glad to see it there, so thank you.
No, thank you. All right, the chair recognizes Jerry Buttimer.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
This is actually old business that was brought up last spring and somewhat over the summer. I applauded the hiring of Ramesh, but I've wanted to stay away and not bother him with the leftovers from last year's project. So if this has been addressed, I'm going to be short either way, but if it's been addressed, terrific. If it hasn't, I just want to bring it to your attention. The issue from last year was the falling light fixture, and the plans, according to what I've read, and Sharma was kind enough to send me the full set of plans and the specs, the plans called for one thing, and I believe we received something entirely different. After the fixture had fallen, and I can't find my other parts, they're too small. After the fixture had fallen, we looked at the drawings, and the drawings called for installation using a unistrut. And it dawned on me over the summer that most people probably have never seen a unistrut in their life. But this is a unistrut, this piece, and they were to be fastened at 4 points. A fixture like this would be at 2 points, but the big gym fixtures were to be fastened at 4 points with half-inch steel rod. That gives you about 1,500 pounds of strength. And it's hung down, so it's working with gravity. What we heard from the electrician was that they had fastened by screwing up with a 1/4-inch lag screw, and that was the reason it released. Now, they were all supposed to have redundancy built in 2 additional ways. One with a safety cable, so if all points of fastening released, the cable would catch it. They're good for about 700 pounds. And they were also supposed to have wire guards, which is another redundancy. If the fixture let loose, typically the fasteners holding up the wire guard would catch the fixture. When the electricians came in to remedy the situation, they promised us publicly that they had removed all the fixtures, inspected them, put them back up, this time using toggle bolts. This is a toggle bolt. So you can see if it goes through the hole and the wings open, it gets There's a lot more to hang from. One of the problems was that they did it through the acoustical panel, which has no structural strength. This will tear out with minimal amount of pressure and a little vibration. This will tear out, but it will last longer. This won't, because this is fastened to and hangs off of structure. So I just wanted to bring that back to the board's attention, because I didn't believe that the main gym at Hauser is safe until it's fixed this way, or our engineer, independent of when it went in wrong, I'd like the engineer to say, whatever solution you guys chose as a board, and you want him to say this too, it's strong and it's safe. Now, the other side of that coin is, if there was a change that said, hey, you can skip doing this for however many hundreds it might cost, and you can do this for 67 cents, then if you follow the process, there's a change order, and there's money due back to the district. So I won't take any more of your time. I just wanted to bring that back to your attention. On a great note, the first thing I noticed pulling in the driveway today is the sight lines are beautiful. 6 or 7 years ago, some kids did the shrubbery as a Eagle Scout project, but I've never seen it look better than today. They're trimmed up, you can see underneath, we can spot kids. It looks nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry, for everything you did. Does anybody else want to make a public comment? All right, then we'll move on. Okay. Next item of business is a public comment response. We received a request from a parent at the last meeting to allow his child to enter kindergarten, even though his homeschool already had the maximum of 20 students. And I understand Dr. Sharma-Lewis has responded to this parent, and we're going to address the possibility of overriding this policy later on this evening, if you'll see it in the agenda. All right? And I don't think we have any other responses. All right, the next item of business are district announcements from Dr. Sharma-Lewis.
The first thing is the rededication ceremonies for Blythe Park and Hollywood schools, and those are going to be held before the October board meeting, which is going to be on October 15th. We're going to do 4 o'clock at Blythe Park and 5 o'clock at Hollywood, and then that'll give us enough time to be back for our 6 o'clock policy meeting at Hauser. So more information will be coming. I'll be working with the building principals as well as their staff and students, putting together some type of ceremony to rededicate both buildings after the construction. In the Cook County Farm Bureau, you will see that one of our staff members is cited in Suburban Life from the July issue. And we had 8 entries for the district logo contest. And what we're going to be doing is the district leadership team has put together a plan where we're going to send them out to all of the schools. So the schools, students and staff will vote on their favorite design, and then select them and bring them back to the district leadership team, and then we'll announce the winner at the September board meeting. We will contact that winner prior to the meeting so the student and the families can be here to recognize them. And then the new logo will be going out on all district communications, we're hoping by October, once we get it branded and put on with a graphic artist and things like that. So we're excited about that process, and that we had 8 very talented entries, as you can see here. They're in your board packet. And once the district has made its selection, we'll have them posted in the district office so the public can come by and see. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma-Lewis. Next item of business is status of FOIA requests and responses.
And in your packet, you will see that we've had 2 requests for FOIA and for FOIA information. One from Jerry Buttimer, and then the response is included. And I believe his response also was, thank you very much that everything was completed. And then we also have 2 FOIAs, one from Bob Skolnick in regards to the Apple invoices, and those are also included for you, and one that is still pending regarding communications and the Hauser lights to and from the district with Concept 3, and to and from the district with Meany Electric. So we're still working on gathering all those information because it's a lot of correspondences. So those are due tomorrow, and so we'll have those for you in the next board packet.
Thank you. All right, the next item of business is the approval of the previous meeting minutes for the regular business meeting of July 16th, 2013, and minutes for the closed session meeting of July 16th, 2013. The minutes have been previously distributed. Are there any corrections? Very good. If there's no corrections of the minutes, could I get a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes of the regular business meeting for 7/16/13 and the meetings of the closed session meeting for July 16, 2013?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Okay, the motion carries, and the minutes of the 7/16/13, the regular business meeting, and 7/16/13 closed session meetings are approved. Okay, next item of business is presentations from the floor, where we're moving on to the summer 2013 capital projects update from our owner's representative, Ramesh Nair. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Ramesh.
Yes.
Sorry. Proceed.
No, it's okay. First, I'd like to address the questions that the resident asked about occupancy inspection. I'm an architect as well. It was one of my qualifications that I put forward when I was hired as the owner of the project. And throughout this construction, I've been here watching the construction going together, and I've insisted that Concept 3 and the engineers be present and issue information on a constant basis so that we're not just going for one occupancy inspection, because after all, once you look at a finished surface, there's hidden stuff above the ceiling, there's stuff beneath. You need to be aware that everything's being put together the right way. So the first inspection that we had is an above ceiling inspection. It happened at all three sites, at Hauser, Blythe, and at Hollywood. In that case, you look above the ceilings because there are penetrations of the pipes that run through, of any ductwork that runs through. If it penetrates what's called a fire-rated partition, means what's a rated corridor, they have to seal that entire section out. Those were done. I mean, it's done in a different color material, so it actually stands out. So if your wall is white, you do it in red. So it's very easy for a fire marshal can literally pop a ceiling, look over, and it's there. You can see how it's being done. Now, as the project has moved forward, that inspection was, we had AMSCO Engineering, who was Concept 3's engineer. He went ahead, looked at all the penetrations that were there. I went and looked at stuff personally too, and there were a lot of openings that were not sealed. In fact, even today, actually just this evening, I made another walkthrough with all the primes and asked them that this has to be complete for our inspection tomorrow. There's some openings which were there. As you can imagine, there were hundreds of openings created in this job. It's very easy to overlook one or two, especially when you put a grid back and you put the ceiling back. So we popped ceilings, we looked through, and that work's being completed right now. So in fact, if there was an old, because a lot of this is renovation, so when we abandon old conduit, which is being exposed, you have to put a cover plate on it if it's not going away. That's being done. So there were literally hundreds of those that had to be covered. It's very easy to overlook this. It's been done. And now when the walkthrough takes place tomorrow with Mark and the West 40 inspectors, I'll be there as well. I'll note their comments. I'm hoping there will be some comments because they shouldn't just take my word or Mark's word for it. They should be doing their job, and if that feedback comes back, we will take care of those issues. I want to reassure you of that. I mean, I take it personally that giving a safe and sound building at the end of construction is very important. I mean, that's the important, because after all, our children go to these schools. I understand the concept too. So I will reassure you of that. Okay. Even though it's not my signature, I'm not supposed to do this, but I do it. Okay, I will reassure you of that. And there was a second question that was asked. You had a question, was it the same thing, what occupancy?
Yeah, just along with the safety, because if it's done on Friday, are they gonna come back
Yes.
to inspect
Now-
before the teachers enter the building and?
Now, unfortunately, when schedules are written, okay, the inspections were always called for on the 21st. Now, hopefully they say everything is great, everything's picked up. Now, that'd be the perfect world.
Yeah.
But there will be touch-ups, but that does not stop us from bringing teachers back in on the day that we are scheduled to have them back. They can still come back because life safety systems are working. I have the individual reports on the fire alarm tests that were done and the PA systems. They both are functioning. And those reports will be submitted to West 40 tomorrow for acceptance.
Yeah, I saw that on the email that went out, but this all is safe for the teachers, is safe for the students, and
Actually, to be honest with you, you cannot occupy the building without an occupancy certificate.
Right, right.
Only construction workers are supposed to be there with a hard hat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's not be fair to say.
No, absolutely. I mean, believe me, that's one of my prime concerns. When parents came visiting the school, they would pop in. I would always try and say, this is not a safe zone yet. You know, there are a lot of sharp ends, there are screws around, you could easily hurt yourself. So I still keep that as a construction zone until we get our occupancy.
Right.
Now, I'll move on to my next phase of this presentation, which is, you have to understand, this is a very complex construction that occurred in a very, very short period. There were challenges at all stages. You got to understand, I mean, 6.5 weeks to literally rebuild all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, do a power upgrade, rebuild all the finishes in that 6 months is a very difficult challenge, because it's not even a question of having hundreds of workers. They're working on top of each other literally, and that makes it a very serious challenge. I mean, we could always say go to 3 shifts, but then what would happen is your price would skyrocket because of the way our system, our labor system is, that we pay premiums for working at night. So to keep costs under control, pretty much our project was written for a straight time project, but overtime is being put in right now to get the schools done. Okay, we are very close, as my presentation will show, and tomorrow's inspections should go smoothly. There may be a few hiccups, but I don't believe there's anything serious enough to trip us up at this stage. So, start off with an artistic shot. You know, the school, this was last night, one of the classrooms was lit up, and I just took a shot to show you that your building is pretty much, from the exterior, it looks just the same as what it looked 6 months ago, but the interior changes are dramatic. I mean, gone are the dull classrooms, gone are the musty carpets. You have a brighter surface, you have a much more modern building under construction right now. Now, this is how the tile was being laid out in the classrooms. Again, it's a very tedious process because you've got to remember there was a major asbestos abatement that took place in here. So the surfaces are going in, this is the new vinyl tile. After it's finished, it gets waxed, polished before the furniture comes into place. This was about 2 days ago. That's your new Blythe Auditorium. If you notice, the ceilings, all brand new light fixtures were going in. I'll show you completed pictures fairly soon. That's what a completed classroom looks like. You can see the modern technology that's coming into the schools. We have projectors, there's computer networks being points, data points in there, and there's air conditioning and heating in the school now. Casework went back in. I mean, the new countertops, new sinks, accessible sinks that were put back. close-up of some of the sinks. Again, you can see one of the projectors that was placed in the classrooms. Again, the ceilings are, we tried to be as close and as preservation-minded as possible. So these are actually the same style. That's what's called a 12 by 12 or a 1 foot by 1 foot spline ceiling. It literally goes together like a spring. It's a very difficult ceiling to put together and actually take it apart without destroying the ceiling. It's like a jigsaw puzzle that goes together, and we pretty much got the whole thing back together. New sinks that we have, the new restrooms. In fact, this afternoon the toilet partitions went in, and it's being cleaned either tonight or tomorrow, and will be ready for occupancy when we get there. That's down view down the corridor of Blythe. This was yesterday. They'll get to wax and clean these corridors fairly shortly, according to my conversation with Bill Radke. Again, a view of the classroom from outside. That's the famous area well that we talked about at length at the last meeting. So it's complete now. That's the finished grill on top. The landscape, once it grows, will pretty much close up that whole section. And that forms the air intake for the new chiller system that's being installed in the basement. The chiller's up and running. We started it last Wednesday. And at tomorrow's inspection, one of the things that's required is we have to have air running through the building. The inspector will look for that. These are the steps leading up to the auditorium under construction. It's a close-up of that area grill. Go to Hollywood. So this was Hollywood's construction on Sunday of last week, which was a major challenge as a lot of parents were asking questions like, will the school open? I took a peek through the window last week, nothing was there, it was looking really tough. But I got to tell you, when workers, you can push them, they get there, they get their act together. And thanks to Lisa and a very dedicated crew, we got to where we are. This is all cleaned up right now. It's being waxed as I speak. There's a crew of about 10 to 15 workers working in the classrooms as I speak. That's one of the classrooms at Hollywood that was completed. That's the biggest challenge that we faced at Hollywood. At the last meeting, I had talked about the fact that the area around Mindy's office had to be reconstructed. That was torn down completely, and there was a question with regards to the structure, which was, it's a precast structure, and there was a faceplate which everyone thought was part of what's called a pre-stressed system. That means if you remove the plate, the structure would collapse. So the contractor did not want to remove that plate. It pretty much brought the job to a halt in this area while the structural engineer looked at the system. He determined that the plate was not part of the structure and we could remove it, thankfully, because if that had been part of the structure and he had removed it, the school would not have opened. We would have had a structural collapse, in fact. It could not have been seen at an early enough date. Only when we opened up the floor could you have seen it. But thankfully, there were two separate systems and we could go ahead. The structural steel was ordered only after we opened it. The challenge was getting the steel. He kept on saying 10 days, it stretched out into 4 weeks. That pretty much brought us to this really tight point, and as everyone who was involved with the project can tell you, the steel went up on that less than 2.5 weeks ago. And we have Mindy's office ready, as I will show you a picture fairly shortly. It's not a very good picture. It's the operable partitions at the stage at Hollywood. That's in the closed position. That's a view of the roof from the top. The new west entrance to Hollywood. Now this again was a very interesting challenge because the contractor was hired said he could not pour the concrete to match the existing one. The reason being, it's not a flat finish. It's called an exposed aggregate finish. So to match that, you can see the two little patches that you see. We had to hire a special concrete contractor. It's a bit of an art because you have to pour it and let it dry a little bit and then wash off the top of the surface to expose the aggregate. So again, see little challenges that came up, how the project had to move through the process. This is the conference room next to Mindy's office under construction. Again, a picture will follow shortly, which was taken about 2 hours ago. This is one of the classrooms, again, just being prepped before the application of a new floor. The question was asked, what about these pipes at the top that run through? That will get a cover plate that will cover that whole, those pipes. The classrooms actually look really nice and bright because through the clear story you get plenty of light. And in fact, today the vendor who's going to supply the blinds was there, and he wants to start his installation too. So it'll be a pretty nice space. Moving on to Hauser. Hauser, this is going to be the dressing room and the drama studio just adjacent to the auditorium. Those light fixtures pretty much make that space. Again, my pictures don't show it as well as I would like to. It looks better on the iPad. That's the ceiling that was installed. So in this case, we actually have a 4x4 grid. That's a 4-foot by 4-foot tile. And in fact, we have a track that runs out here, which holds the curtain in place and goes by. And there's a mezzanine just to the right. It's complete. This is I wouldn't call it the infamous, it's the famous gem of Hauser, okay? This was refinished as part of this project. It's got a new, the floor was refinished, the entire wall, all the walls, all the boards were taken down and repainted. It really looks very nice. I will talk a little bit about the lights at Hauser. Again, this is before I came onto the picture, but my opinion was sought at some time, and I looked at the light fixtures. I looked at Meany Electric's response. Okay, now I spoke to Mr. I forget his name, Slobodnik. I think he's the president of Meany Electric, and I asked him a simple question: would you let your children play in this gym? It was a simple question. I said, forget about your professionals thing. Do you think it's safe? He thought for a moment, paused, because no one ever takes it personally until that time, right? And then he said, yes. So I said, how are you so confident about this? He said, Ramesh, what I have done is, I did not take each light down. I did what was asked of my contract at that time, which is I have anchored each of these lights to the structure. Jerry did have a very valid point. He brought up the point about the fact that you had a picture which had indicated that one of the screws had gone through some acoustical tile, was not a very good anchor. He said, after inspecting each of the lights, the one that he found was that one, but the rest of them he had re-anchored back into the structure, and he said that he had applied enough force on those lights, he felt confident enough that it could stand the structure. Now, have it independently tested? I'm sorry, I can't verify that. But he reassured us that each of those light fixtures had a weight hung on it and they'd been tested. But that's his thing. I would have to get better proof than that, but I just want to give you an update on that part of it. This is the what's called a ship's ladder leading up to the mezzanine. It was being painted last week. These are some shelving units that were placed inside in that section. Again, more shelving units up in the mezzanine. These are the lights, as I said, the dramatic effect of the LED lights. Looks beautiful. So, more pictures of the gym. Again, the seating. In this case, it's what's called a concealed light. The lights are concealed; they're not surface mounted. And that was this morning. The sports flooring was going into the Hauser gym. This is done. This will also be inspected tomorrow. And in this case, the life safety systems are tying into existing system. It's not an independent system. So the fire alarm ties into an existing system. The sprinklers tie into an existing system. They were inspected almost 3 weeks ago when the ceiling was exposed and certified as operational. Okay. Again, the application of the sports flooring. In fact, the double doors that lead to the auditorium are soundproof. A very special door, an extremely heavy door. It almost required 4 people to put it in place. It's a pretty interesting installation. You can see there are actually mirrors on this side, so it's actually almost like a dance studio, if you ask me. It plays that role too.
This is the bump out room.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
143.
Okay. It looks so different from
Yes.
June.
That's the track which I mentioned for the drapes or the curtains. That's the last thing that's going to be hung because it would get dirty. So he said, don't hang it till the inspection's over. You put it up after that. And now the last set of pictures which I want to share with you is the pictures from less than an hour ago. That's the lights have been installed at Blythe's auditorium. So you can see the dramatic effect of the lights in the auditorium along with the new ceiling. The seats were covered during construction for protection reasons. That'll be removed and cleaned up. Again, just a couple of effects. I'm not a photographer, but I'll try my best. This was the old entry to Hollywood. It's been carpeted. Again, this just happened the last hour. Mindy's office. I mean, again, as I said, a week ago, there were people who had looked into the space and said there was no way we would finish. It is an inch away from finishing. You can see that plywood at the back represents where the window goes in. The window is supposed to come in tomorrow, followed by its installation, and the closure takes place. But all electrical systems, everything is in. The corner office out there needs a coat of paint, but otherwise, we are almost there. As I said, we're just inching towards that finish. This is the other side of the main office. As I said, the waxing was in progress in the classrooms. It just comes together. I mean, sometimes things that look impossible even 2 days ago comes together and it all starts to work. That's one of the classrooms that's been finished. It's been waxed. There we go. The library installation was in progress out there, and we're looking at this. I mean, it's probably take another day and a half. This is not part of our contract, but it's a separate vendor who's in there working in the space right now. Well, that's all I have as far as beautiful pictures go. But as far as construction, we're getting there. In most of the cases, we are 90 to 95. In many instances, we are 100% done. But as of today, your schools will open on time. That's the best I could say, unless the inspectors change their mind tomorrow and say, no, you haven't done anything out here. But I don't see that. To make sure that we are doing our homework correctly, this evening I walked all the primes through all the spaces, going through and telling them this has to be done, that's to be done. It's like an unofficial punch list, literally, to make sure that tomorrow's inspections go as smoothly as possible. It's called preemptive work. We got to do that, get it right the first time, because we don't want callback work. That's what I do. On the financial side, I've got to reassure you that we're doing very well on this project. Right now, in the last 2 weeks, I have not processed many financial change orders, simply because we've been so tied up with the construction part of it. But for the most part, this project is going to be within about 1.5% in change orders, which, as I said last time, if in a major renovation project like this we are under 5%, it's considered a very good result. At 1.5% is incredible. And it's not even counting some of the credits, I believe, that are owed to us. I will get every penny back that's owed to the district. If we get that money back, yes, we'll actually probably sink it back to 1% in change orders. We've done very well on that aspect. So right now, if you look at the financial packages that we distribute to the board, I think it's tracking at $29,000 out of $5.5 million, which is about 2/3%, if that. So that's the summary of my report, and excuse my appearance for today, but I was in construction all day.
I'd just like to thank you for all your hard work. I know Ramesh has been working pretty much 7 days a week for the last couple of weeks on our behalf to make sure it happens, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.
And so do I. Thank you, Ramesh. You've done an excellent job and really appreciate it. And then 2 points of good news. It'll be open for school day, and I like to hear about the change orders, because I think we're expecting, 3%? Over, yeah, about, more or less. So that's very good news. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Next on the agenda is the district dashboard, where Dr. Sharma Lewis will present district guiding principles and action plans.
Thank you. Back in July, the board and I met for our first meeting together, and we identified 3 areas of focus for the district to work on for this coming school year and long term. And we identified those as our guiding principles: academic and professional excellence, rigorous communications, and finance and operational excellence. So what we did as a district leadership team, and the district leadership team consists of all of the principals, the assistant principal, and then all the directors, director of technology, director of special ed, director of finance and operations, as well as director of academic excellence, and myself met probably over the past month about 6 times, and during those 6 times at 4 to 6 hours a time, and we came up with goal statements for each of those areas. And from those goal statements, we also came up with action plans in the 3 areas of the guiding principles that we talked about: the academic and professional excellence, rigorous communications, as well as finance and operational excellence. What we did was we divided this presentation up into 3 areas, each of the guiding principles, and I'm going to ask Dr. Gannon, who's our Director of Academic Excellence, to speak to our collaborative work that we've done together and how we've identified the goal statement, the guiding principle, the goal statement, and each of the action plans and the process that we went through. So I'm going to hand it over to Brian, who's going to do the first part of our presentation. It's just
Okay. All right. So obviously one of our guiding principles is academic and professional excellence. And I could talk about this all day, so I'm going to try not to make this too long. But so District 96 will ensure innovative and challenging experiences to optimize teaching and learning. And as we go through the academic and professional excellence guiding principles, I just want to reassure everyone that when we're talking about academic excellence and optimized teaching and learning, it's for all kids. It's for all kids. It's for all programs. It's for everything we do here in District 96. So we're really considering the needs of all students and how we can improve their education. And one way we're going to do that is, one thing we're expecting is to develop a plan to align all district programs and professional development to the Common Core state standards. It's a big project, but we have a great team, and we've been doing a lot of work just trying to really just get our heads around what needs to get done, starting to carve our path towards Common Core alignment. And in order to do that, we set some certain parameters and some goals. And how we're going to do this is we're going to organize a district-wide team to mobilize the alignment of the Common Core state standards by developing a framework to evaluate all existing district programs. You're going to see these 1, 2, and 3 are kind of common throughout our presentation, because one of the first things we need to do is we need to evaluate what's happening now. We need to have a framework to do that. Then we're going to determine our strengths and needs, and then we're going to create a plan to prioritize and address the needs. Who's responsible? We're going to have a lot more acronyms. I'm just learning them now, and I have to learn a lot more, but one of them is we are going to establish a CCAT team, or a CCAT team, however you want to say it. So it's we're still in those stages right now, because I will reach out to the staff as soon as they get back and start this. But it should be, the expectation, or the hope, I should say, is for that to be a very diverse group of educators and community members here in Riverside. So our district leadership team will help foster that. And then a timeline. The timeline, again, it's going to seem kind of repetitive, but we're really committed to keeping through this timeline in just about everything we're doing. We're going to communicate to staff in September 2013. Right away we're going to communicate some of our ideas, some of our plans, and get that going. The CCAT will be established by October 2013, and we're going to begin the alignment process in November 2013. I just want to state that it doesn't mean we're not going to be meeting and talking about it until then. It just means we're going to begin the official alignment process then. Right now we're still gathering information and working through that. So I've met with Quest teachers, I'm meeting with the LIST teachers next week, and we're starting to figure out the direction that we need to go and the most effective and efficient way to get there. Evaluations, how will we know that it worked? We're going to create a comprehensive plan that aligns all district programs and professional development to the Common Core state standards. So I'm very confident that with the team that we have, we will be able to by the end of the school year, have a really, really good idea of our future as far as a Common Core aligned district. Again, it doesn't mean we're not going to align throughout the school year, but that will be our evaluation by the end to make sure that we're there, we're aligned. So another thing that we're expecting for academic and professional excellence is to develop a comprehensive professional appraisal system aligned to the PARA guidelines. The PARA guidelines refer to this state requirements for teacher evaluation. One of the reasons, obviously, we put this in academic excellence is because we're also committed to our evaluation plan to be a professional development plan as well that focuses on individual student growth. So I very much see this as united working with teachers and helping to keep high standards, set new standards for our district. How are we going to do that? We're going to organize a district-wide team to mobilize the alignment by, again, you'll see the same framework because we're really focusing on doing something well and doing something right. So we're going to, again, develop the framework to evaluate the current evaluation system. We're going to determine the strengths and needs, and we're going to create our plan to prioritize those strengths and needs. We're going to have a para action team that's called PAT. So there's another acronym. That's going to include members of the REC, and we've met already to have some discussions about it, as well as the district leadership team. So, and members of the REC are all staff. So we won't involve all staff, but we'll open it up and meet with different stakeholders on our staff. So timeline's very similar. Communicate to staff in September. We want to get moving right away. We're going to establish the PAT by October 2013 and begin action planning in November 2013. And we'll evaluate it again by having a comprehensive professional appraisal system aligned to PARA guidelines will be established. So we have some time. We have until 2014, which is our next contract, to actually be fully in line, but now's the time to do it. I mean, we're aligning the Common Core. We should then be aligning our professional development and teacher evaluation systems at the same time to make sure that we're all aligned and then move forward from there, which then, oops, sorry.
You said 2015. Is that right?
Sorry?
2015 was, you have to be up to Common Core? Is that what you're saying?
That's for para.
Oh, the para.
That's for para, yeah. Our Common Core assessment, so this school year we're going to still have our ISAT test, which is a test we've had for years, but it's going to look different. It's going to be fully aligned to Common Core. Now, to be honest with you, we're not quite sure what that's going to look like. We haven't seen any samples yet, and the ISAT's going away after this school year. So we have this 1 year where the state's aligning their state tests to Common Core, so we're not quite sure what that's going to look like at this point. But then after that, we know that we're going to have the PARC assessment, which is a computer-based assessment, which should include some professional growth models for kids as well. That'll be aligned to Common Core, and it's more or less half of the states that have adopted Common Core will be using the PARC assessment, so that'll be a little bit more research-based and will really help us figure out how to align. Okay, so that one. All right, so yes.
On this, what was the makeup of the CCAT team? Is it same people, staff from REC and district leadership team?
So there'll be members of the district leadership team and we want diverse representation from staff. So we'll pick we've talked about having this open to application process, and we're not quite sure exactly what that's going to be. That's more in the planning stages that we're going to be in September. But we want to have lots of input and lots of feedback from specialists in all areas. That'll be our goal. Okay. So 2 more. Another thing that we're expecting is to develop district-wide instructional technology guidelines to optimize rigorous and relevant learning experiences. How we're going to do this, we're going to follow that same framework again. Who is responsible? The 21st Century Think Tank team, which is actually supposed to be, there's a big inside joke on this one, but I won't go there. 21TQ, so that's what it's supposed to be. Same thing, same timeline. I mean, we're really going to start going right away and align everything together. Because again, what we're going to do with instructional technology needs to align with what we're doing with Common Core, which then also should align with how we're working with teachers for professional development and growth. So again, I feel like it needs to happen all together. And we're going to have district-wide comprehensive technology guidelines that will be established, and they will really focus on using our instructional technology to enhance learning. That's the key. And then, one more. We're expecting one more thing. No, we're actually expecting a lot more with this. We're going to foster inclusive learning experiences that maximize the least restrictive environments, LRE. And how we're going to do that, again, we're going to follow a very similar process. We're going to create another team, the Student Support Committee, SSC. Timeline, again, is very similar. And then the evaluation is going to look a little bit different on this one. We're going to know that this worked by having district-wide comprehensive guidelines that will be established and based upon best practices. So when we're looking at inclusion with children and differentiation in general, we're going to be doing a lot of research on best practices, and we're going to be providing guidelines because we need to work within a system that is consistent, and we need to be able to support that system. So especially with least restrictive environment, our goal is not to have this big plan on what it looks like or what it is, but it's to create guidelines on expectations of least restrictive environment, how to support students in least restrictive environment, as well as the professional development piece of that as well. So it'll all be included in our guidelines for that.
What do you foresee? Is that looking like a guideline book that would be available just for staff? Would it be available? Would it be posted on our website, available to the public to see what are our guidelines and how do we define that? Least restrictive environment?
Well, and that's another great question that I did talk about is how we define that. That's important too. Because we talked today at our meeting today, and that might mean different things to different people, and we want to make sure we're all on the same page with that. So the guidelines would help us define that. As far as I see this as something that we're going to want to share with as many people as possible, because what I see this as is something that we can say is best for kids everywhere you are and everywhere you go. So I don't see ultimately any reason why we would just keep it internally, as far as not sharing it publicly. I don't know when that would happen, because I know that it's going to be something that as we do our research and we start to implement stuff, it's going to take some time. So I think that would be one of the later stages when we've really had a chance to work through this and feel very confident about how it's supporting students. Then I could see us really sharing it publicly then. While it's a work in progress, I think we all have great ideas and we all have our views on what we want to do, but I really feel like we need to research it, implement it, and then evaluate it before we do that.
Is this going to be tied into our existing RTI and AP processes and so forth?
Yes. All of this. So RTI, to be honest with you, and I'm sorry I said I wouldn't talk too much, but it's a good question. RTI, so as we use our data points with students to provide RTI services, and again, I'm a firm believer, and I would say our leadership team is that RTI services isn't necessarily, well, it's not. I mean, we're talking about like least restrictive environment. RTI services is differentiation for students who learn all different ways and who achieve at all different levels. I mean, it is differentiating their instruction, so we're meeting wherever they're at and their needs. So there are 3 tiers of RTI. I look at RTI though as a diamond because I look at our highly gifted kids as well. I mean, we need to differentiate for them as well. So it's a little bit different in that sense. But to answer your question, as we align to Common Core, our RTI systems will be aligned to Common Core, which could mean that as the standards are raised, because that's what we're going to do, we're raising our expectations. And I always say, how could that not be a good thing? I mean, we're raising expectations. That's good for kids. As we raise those expectations, our time might look a little bit different. There may be students that weren't receiving certain services before, but now that we've raised those expectations, we need to support them to get there as well. So some of that might look a little bit different, but it'll all be aligned with Common Core. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
You said the RTI has 3. You said there's 3 components of that.
So the way that RTI has been defined is you have a triangle and you have your tier 3 students, and those are your students who need additional support. Let's say for literacy, they might be reading a couple grade levels below grade level, and so students in Tier 3 and RTI, we want to really provide them with as much literacy minutes and support as we can, as much of an individualized instructional plan as we can. And then there's Tier 2, students who are below grade level and need additional support, let's say in literacy, so we provide extra small group support for them. And then Tier 1 is instruction for everybody. But within that Tier 1, you differentiate your instruction to meet those kids' needs in your classroom. So it's not like it's a one-size-fits-all. It's very much not like that at all. My point before was that I also feel like we need to keep a strong focus on our highly gifted kids as well, because sometimes in Tier 1, they might not get the challenge that they need in that setting as well, because they're going to do well. I mean, I'm very aware of the fact that we're going to have kids that are going to come into our school today, or Tuesday, I should say, that without learning a thing could probably pass the ISET test at the end of the year. If that is our benchmark, we haven't done anything for that child. So we really need to put that extra focus into how we deliver services to students, which is via RTI, to make sure that we're addressing that as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Dick. My portion is communication, but one of the things we're going to communicate specifically with academic and professional excellence is going to be through the education committee, which is going to meet every other month starting in October. So we'll be giving you updates and progress updates and timelines and how things are going, and have committee reports through that process and how we're going to communicate to the public, which is, I believe, also part of David's question. The second area or second guiding principle is the rigorous communications. And I'm glad that it was commented on today that people are starting to see some increased levels of communication, and we hope that that continues and they get even more rigorous. The goal statement is that District 96 will communicate in a purposeful and timely manner to all stakeholders. And just in the past 4 weeks, we did send out a letter from the superintendent to all staff, as well as to all the parents welcoming them, and we hope that that is one way that we're going to continue to communicate and keep people involved and informed. So what are we expecting? We're expecting to enhance regular communication. And how are we going to do this? We're going to increase the use of multiple modalities, and what that means is electronic, print, personal, phone calls, even responses to public comment here at a board meeting, just more engaged and more frequent types of communication in different ways. We're also going to implement social media communication, and in a little bit you're going to hear an example of what we're doing at one of our schools. And we're also going to research and develop an updated website. So we're looking to make our website a little bit more interactive, a little bit more purposeful and informative, and more current and relevant. Who is going to be responsible for this? We're hoping that this is an all District 96 staff initiative. Like I said, we started this just a few weeks ago in August of 2013. We're hoping that for number 2, they implement the social media communication, that the school as well as the district will have a Facebook and Twitter account, so parents and community members can follow us starting in January of 2014, and then start looking at, in October 2013, with the help of the education committee, research and develop an updated website. So how are we going to know it works? If this is a little bit different, we have the number 1s kind of going with the number 1s, and the number 2 is going with the number 2, and the number 3 going with the number 3. The Hollywood social media, research and development feedback. Ms. Keller is going to talk a little bit about that in the next slide of what she is doing, leading Hollywood with the social media research phase. And then number 2 is district and community-wide feedback. Second trimester, we may send out a parent survey. We don't know what that looks like yet, but just how is that social media working? How are the newsletters working? What do you expect to see in a website? And then at the end of the year, Illinois is putting out an Essential 5 survey in the third trimester, and that'll ask parents and staff and students, how informed do you feel, how connected do you feel with the school and the district? So we'll gather some data that way as well. So I'm going to ask Mindy to just share a little bit about the Hollywood research that she's doing, and as we shared earlier, do you want to just click on that?
Sure. Well, yeah, I'll click on it. As we've, talked about ways to enhance communication, we realized that one very way that many of our parents and community access communication is through social media. So we've, talked about how can we utilize that to enhance our district communication. So of course, two major social media platforms that are out there are Facebook and Twitter. So we're really excited at Hollywood School that we are going to be a part of this research and development, and just to kind of get our feet wet in social media and see how is this tool working and how can we use this to best keep informed and engaged with our community. So we've set up Facebook and Twitter accounts at Hollywood. So this has just recently gone out. It was in my very initial newsletter. So we've just had 2 posts on here so far, just welcoming everyone to the social media pilot with Facebook and Twitter at Hollywood School. And then we've also put together a responsible use agreement, we called it, which if you click on this, just reinforcing, that we follow Facebook and Twitter's policies in terms of the expectations and the use of these tools, but that we don't want this to be in lieu of other communications. We have standard protocols. So, if you have a concern with, a situation that maybe your child is experiencing, we still want you to come to the teacher, to come to the principal. Those practices are still in place, but this is just an additional form of communication. So we did post that as well. So what's nice about these accounts is they're linked with one another. So what we post on Facebook also posts on Twitter. So we know some parents are avid Facebook users and they've never accessed Twitter, or vice versa. Somebody might be an avid Twitter user but doesn't utilize Facebook. It's going to post the same thing on both, so that, whichever platform you may use, that's where you can access the information. So we're really excited about trying this out. And then we've talked about starting to roll this out. Hollywood's going to give it a try for about a month, see how it's going. Hopefully, we hope we don't have any hurdles or bumps in the road, and we can start rolling it out over the first trimester. We've talked to a couple other schools that are really anxious about getting the ball rolling with this as well. So then we hope at the second part of the first trimester to roll it out to a couple other schools. So then by January we're ready. We've addressed any situations that may have arisen. Hopefully there won't be any, but we can roll it out to all schools. And I know Dr. Sharma Lewis mentioned the possibility of utilizing a survey, and that's something we're just interested in parents' feedback, and we don't know exactly. I don't know that we know at this point exactly what all those questions are going to be, but are people using this more than other forms of communication? Are they not accessing this? How, is this better for the reminders? Is this better for just highlighting what's going on in classrooms? For sharing updates about exciting projects that are happening? So those will just be some of the questions, but we're really excited about embarking on this new journey, new form of communication. Then one thing I also wanted to mention in regards to enhancing communications, as you saw the newsletter from Dr. Sharma Lewis, all the parents received that. We're also going to be looking at doing a newsletter after every board meeting and a newsletter from the district as a whole. So just highlighting a couple highlights from each school, as well as any news from Dr. Gannon in terms of academic excellence relating to these 3 priorities. So we will look for that. We're in the process of exploring, is that going to be monthly? Is that going to be at the trimester? But those will be 3 major forms of communication that parents will see. A newsletter from the superintendent, a newsletter from the district as a whole, and then a newsletter highlighting what happened at the board meeting.
Is there any thought of reaching the audience that's not parents, but just outside of parents? Is there a plan? Is that as one of those mechanisms intended to go to that audience as well?
We're hoping that through, as we explore new website and new ways to deliver this communication, right now we just create an attachment, we send it out via email. But we're looking at services that can, such as constant contact. If you see all those emails that come through to you, if you look at the bottom of it, what that is, you can subscribe or unsubscribe. That could then have a link on your district website for anyone to subscribe to those communications. So families that may not have a child at school but want to subscribe to district level communications, to board communications, could have access to that. So that's definitely a big part of the conversation that we've been having, and we hope that that's through this year, as we're going through that, we hope to be able to offer that.
And then will you update us on the results of your test?
Definitely.
I'm kind of curious to see how it
Me
works.
too.
And the reason we started out, because we had a couple of people ask, why Hollywood? And we said we wanted to just start out small, to see if there were any hurdles or if there were any challenges. We could address them in a smaller community or a smaller way rather than going district-wide right away. Because I know the principals are very excited about getting started. But we wanted to just start out small, try it for a month, and then bring other people on board. And then, like I said, by January, have everybody. And then also, Lisa, to your question, how do we get more community members informed and on board or linked in? I think we'll also look for ways to work with the local media and say, here's some opportunities to get connected with District 96, and we can put our Facebook and our Twitter accounts, as well as how to get on an email link through our website. So go through that way.
I have a couple of thoughts. Just first, really quick on the getting out to the community. Is there a way we could team up with the villages of Riverside, Brookfield, and North Riverside, just to see if they have any email channels that we could just say, please, send this out and let everybody know that this is our communication plan, and we're reaching out to families that may not have students in the district who, want to know what's going on. Here's some channels to do that. Might be worth
That's a great
trying.
suggestion.
Yeah, I think you've started to lay that groundwork with your meeting with the village, with the chief of police, Chief Whitesell, and having that first joint communication out. And I think that's an avenue to keep on exploring, to see if we can, leverage the services that are already out there.
And the other comment was about the Facebook. This will be an interesting experiment. There's some IASB materials that I've read about the slings and arrows of social media for school organizations, but I think the responsible use agreement is excellent. I do wonder, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in practice and how you can enforce it. How much time will it take for somebody to moderate comments and things like that? Maybe for a small school like Hollywood, it might be easy, but it could be interesting. So keep us informed on how that works.
I had the same thoughts too. I'm thinking, oh gosh, here we go, the 12 and 13-year-olds and maybe younger that have Facebook accounts, what are they going to do? And I became concerned about that, because now are we exposing them to disciplinary problems because they're posting things on the Hollywood school or other school websites, but Facebook pages. So let's just hope it all plays out for the best.
Are there other schools that have done this that, that were kind of looked into beforehand?
Can I interrupt for a second? I'm sorry. This is a board meeting, and I have to limit the public comments to the beginning. No, it's just the way we started doing things, and I made an announcement in the beginning. So I apologize. But please submit all questions to us, and we'll get them an answer for you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
So Mindy, who keeps the database for Hollywood schools? That's your administrative top person? Or your...
Right now, I'm the one who will be overseeing this, but I think that's what we'll learn as we go, is this something we need additional support with? Is who is going to oversee this? And as Mr. Perry said, how much time does that take? Is this something that's manageable? But right now, it is me that has access to it, and the tech support team as well.
Sure. And are there parents and students at your school that do not have email accounts? At Hollywood School?
At my school, we don't currently have anyone that does not have a registered email account. Now, not to say not Facebook and Twitter, but
Yeah. But everyone does have an email account, as far as you know.
at the current time, to my knowledge, but of
Yeah.
course, we have new registrants all the time, so I
Yes.
can't speak to
Okay.
anyone new that may have come through. We did meet with some other area schools, and we've talked to other schools who have successfully implemented this and talked about any challenges they may have faced. So, you know, as Art shared, there's definitely a wide range of experiences, but we've heard from some the very positive experiences that they've had through this mode of communication. So we felt that as we look at enhancing communication, looking at the way many people access communication, they may be checking Facebook on their phone multiple times a day. And if this shows up on their home page, oh, yes, we have an open house tonight at 7 o'clock. I forgot about that, but this might be a great way, an additional tool to reach them.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's where I'm seeing probably a good use and a limited use is for these events, for those upcoming items, and to use that. But you know, the official communications would go out through the regular channels. But to Randy's point, my expectation is all this is just an addition. You know, that if someone needs print still because they don't have an email account, because they don't have Facebook, that's still available.
And we have a list, the principals have a list of all the families that don't have email, and we mail those out. Any communications from the district or from the school are mailed to them.
And I think that's a great point, that this is just an additional tool. This isn't replacing things we have in place. There will still be a flyer posted about open house coming up next Thursday or whenever that may be. But this might be just an additional tool to remind them, but it won't replace some of those, because we know not everyone is on Facebook, not everyone is on Twitter, but it's just an additional way we can utilize communication to better keep informed.
Thank you.
One
Do you have
more
more things?
comment.
All right,
One more
all right.
thing, and
I gotta move it along.
We,
but go
I
ahead.
know. I assume that the policy for just posting content on things like Facebook and Twitter is very similar to what we already have for the website, where we don't disclose specific students' identities and things like that. Is that correct?
And we, parents have the option on the consent form to opt out of photo, video, which would include this.
Okay, super. Thanks.
Is that it?
That's it.
But you're also referring just to names too, right, in your comment?
Well, yeah. Just the same
same
thing
way.
as it is on the website. So on and so forth. Yeah.
Maybe the policy committee chair should kind of review
Pretty
that.
busy.
Yeah, you
That
better.
sounds like a great
He's
idea.
pretty busy.
So,
According to your rules.
do you have more, Dr. Sherman-Lewis?
Yes.
Okay.
We have 2 more slides and then we
Yeah, we got a lot to do.
So what else are we expecting as far as our rigorous communications? We're also expecting to enhance partnership with district and community agency, community groups and agencies. And as David mentioned, meeting with the village, meeting with the police chiefs, not just of Riverside, but of North Riverside as well as of Brookfield. Keep in contact with them, have regular meetings with them, look at different ways to partner with them, doing joint communications, looking at ways to possibly subscribe to joint emails. And that's not just coming from me, it's coming from the district. And it's going to be ongoing. We started it last month and it's going to be ongoing. And then at DLT, which I shared with you earlier, is the entire district leadership team. We'll give trimester updates to the board as to what's been happening, how it's been happening, and who has been involved. And then our last area for communication is enhanced communications for our diverse audiences. With our changing community members coming to all of our schools, we want to develop a system to provide translated materials and resources. The Director of Academic Excellence and principals are going to be working together to identify families and what specific needs and languages that they have. We're going to start doing that in September 2013. We're also going to look for ways to include that on our website and sending materials home. And then we're hoping to have a system in place so we can communicate that to families and to parents of how we're going to communicate, what languages will be available, what documents will be available, and how they can access them. And last, but certainly not least,
Most exciting part. Finance and operational excellence. Thanks, Brian, for giving me 30 seconds to do this.
Thank
District
you.
96 will establish fiscally responsible and efficient processes for long-term district success.
give me.
Click it down. Sorry, it's on the side, sorry.
Here, let me help you out, buddy. 30 seconds is up. What are we expecting? We're expecting to maintain a balanced budget. How are we going to do this? Monitor revenues and expenses at the building, department, and district level. Who's responsible? Surprise, I am. District of Finance, Director of Finance, and the district leadership team. Our timeline is going to be in October. In October, we'll start providing financials on a monthly basis. You'll know where we're at each month, and you can ask questions about why are we so high, why do we have a higher percentage in ed fund at this point of the year, and so forth. Our evaluation, we'll do monthly reports presented to the Board of Ed, and quarterly reports presented to the leadership team. Our second goal, effective allocation of funds to support teaching and learning. How are we going to do this? Create an efficient process for all purchases and expenditures. We want to make sure that whatever instructional material we're purchasing coincides with our Common Core. We're not doing any spending that we did this last year. We bought this in the past. We're just going to continue buying it as past practice. Who's responsible? All District 96 staff. Timeline again in October. On our evaluation, purchases and expenditures are going to align to district's guiding principles and action plans. Our next goal is to develop a 5-year financial plan with fund balance, revenue, and expense projections. We're going to create an integrated plan that encompasses all facets of District 96, including education, operation, maintenance, and capital improvements. Who's responsible? Director of Finance and Operations, DLT, and the District 96 staff. Timeline would be beginning November. Our evaluation will present a 5-year projection plan in March. We'll factor in where we're at with the tax levy, where we're at with state grants. Are they funding them 100%, or are they planning on future cuts? And the same with the federal grants.
In the part of the valuation, are we planning on ongoing monitoring of how are we tracking to that plan? Will you present a way of periodically?
My projections will not only have the historical projections, so what happened in the past, we'll have an ongoing each month. So every month I provide the report, you'll see where we're at with our fund balance and our monthly expenses to date. Okay. Last goal is to ensure technology infrastructure supports 21st century teaching and learning. We're going to develop a framework to evaluate existing infrastructure, determining strengths and or areas of need, and creating a plan to prioritize and address needs. Responsibility falls on the Director of Finance and Operations with the external consultants in collaboration with DLT and D96, District 96 staff. This will begin in October, and it'll be evaluated a technology infrastructure plan to support 21st century. Teaching and learning has been established.
What is the time frame for the evaluation piece of this?
Well, the evaluation piece, we would initially, it would be 5 months, I think we decided, was told us. And then they'd look at 2 to 3 years in advance.
Okay.
This is me.
Question? Thank you.
And just to sum up, we don't want you to think that these are, even though this is a lot, and there's a lot of areas of focus, we also have additional areas of focus that are going to continue. For example, we're also looking at human resources and looking at ways to have hiring practices that really focus on excellence. We're also going to continue with the Educational Committee looking at gifted, ELL, and world languages, overall safety and security of our buildings. And we talked, or one of the comments today was just the signing and signing out of students at lunch, and that was something that we discussed as a district of how do we increase safety and security for our students as well as for our staff. Working with police departments to look at crisis planning and doing drills regularly and more consistently throughout the day with all of our schools. Also looking at ways to enhance school and district climate and culture, making it a more collaborative and a teamwork environment where people's opinions are valued and there's two-way and ongoing communication. And then just look at overall consistency and collaboration within the buildings and throughout the district. How we're going to continue to keep you informed. We're going to have ongoing progress monitoring. We're going to give you updates at our January, April, and June board meetings in all of these areas. And then also district-wide, as I mentioned earlier, at the education and the finance committee meetings, we're going to give you updates on each of the areas and then also get direction from the committee as to how we're doing in other areas that we need to look at. Be meeting with PTA and PTO and then monthly parent leadership team meetings, which I know there's a board representative on that we meet on a monthly basis, giving them updates of how we're doing, and then also have ongoing state of the district, how are we doing with staff and with community members, in addition to say, how's our progress monitoring in each of these areas, and what are we doing well, what do we need to continue doing, or what do we need to be looking at. That's all we have, so thank you.
I had a question on the monthly reports, are we expecting anything new in the format that we'll see it in?
It'll definitely be a different format.
Okay.
What you'll essentially have is you'll have each fund, column for revenues, a column for expenditures, your beginning fund balance and your ending fund balance. And it'll be month to month, and each month at some point in December, and I'll have percentages, and in December you should say, okay, what I'm expecting to see is 50% of our expenses should be incurred at this point. And you'll see, I'll have a column that shows what percentage of where we're at with expenditures. So if there's any fluctuations in there, if we're at December and you see 75%, Zach, why are we at 75%? What's happening this year that we're incurring the expense so much before the end of the year when we still have 6 months of spending left?
And but we're still going to be receiving all the invoices.
Oh yes. Oh no. This is separate from the invoice.
But how will that relate to? Do one support the other in
Yes,
terms of being able to just all right? So here is, you see it in the invoices. Here's these additional expenses. This is what's ticking up.
The way
here
it's set up is the invoices when this occurs at a board meeting or a regular meeting, the invoices you approve are going to show up in next month. What's in the expenditures is going to be the previous month.
Okay.
Because it's been approved, ready to be paid. It won't be released until board approval, so I won't actually hit the account until approval. So it doesn't get posted until the next following month.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, great. Thank you, everyone. All right. The next item on the agenda is reports from the school board committees. Does the education committee have a report?
We did meet. Mary Rose and myself met with Dr. Jen and Dr. Sharma Lewis and talked through just some, level setting on what, our expectations are going into this planning process. And out of that discussion came an action plan between now and the first education committee meeting, which will be in October 1st, to develop that agenda and the ongoing agenda topics then that we need to cover throughout the year. So I'll let you, if you had anything to say.
It's our goal at October 1st to kind of share with you where we're going to be going, who's going to be on that CCAT committee, and kind of the plans for the year of how we're going to work together, and also of each of those areas that we identified with instructional technology, inclusion and least restricted environment, and also with the para guidelines. So we'll be focusing on each of those in the month of October, but really we want to look at the Common Core planning and identify a year-long plan of professional development and how we're going to be working together, and then keep you updated every other month on those 4 areas.
Thank you.
Sure.
And the finance committee have a report?
I do. I also met, Mary Rose and I met with Zach and Bobna, and we will be meeting 6 times this year, or maybe 5 times. 5 times every other month. Opposite education will be a finance committee meeting. So the first finance committee meeting is going to be at the beginning of September, and we've kind of laid out a structure over the course of the year for those 6 meetings that have budget and levy at one point, and then audit and tax, and again the tax levy, and then we go into some financial planning and projections at the beginning of the year, and we circle back with starting up the budget process for next year, and then evaluating how we did. So each one of those finance meetings has kind of a strategic plan in place, and then we'll pick up the rest of the miscellaneous building issues and or other finance items that don't fit under those big umbrellas. So that's our plan.
Thank you, Lisa. And does the policy committee have a report?
So I met with Dr. Sharma Lewis to talk about our priorities for the policy committee. We will be meeting, we're going to be put on schedule to meet every month just prior to our regularly scheduled board meeting. So it'll run from 6 to about 7:15. It's not a lot of time, and we have a lot of items to be addressed by this committee, including just your standard IASB press updates, where they're updating policy provisions for legal references, what have you. So that's still going to be on our agenda, but we've also identified certain priorities that we want to get through in determining whether or not our policies need to be updated or new policies need to be created. So we kind of characterize them between level 1 and level 2. This is it's not that anything is more important than another. A lot of it is depending on when's the most optimal time to get a policy addressed, and just kind of looking at when of these issues come in and how we want to get them accomplished. So starting with our October meeting, our level 1 priority issue that we're going to be addressing is related to hiring, and it was identified here. One of our goals is developing a hiring excellence, and so we're going to be reviewing our policy on hiring to determine, do we want to develop some policy direction for our administration in terms of our hiring practices. How do we define hiring excellence? How does this board want to direct our administration in that manner? So so we're going to allocate a certain amount of time to that level 1 priority. Then we're going to allocate some time for a level 2 priority that we're going to just kind of introduce. So the first level 2 priority issue is with regards to code of ethics. So this is an issue that the prior boards have discussed, talked about whether or not we need to enhance our policy related to code of ethics for our staff, for administrations, and for the board members as well. So that's kind of the format as we go along. We're going to keep on. We're just going to as we knock off these priority issues, then we're going to move on to the next levels. So additional level 1 priorities that we're going to be dedicating a lot of time in this upcoming year are going to be related to bullying and harassment, and emergency plan drills and procedures, a crisis plan. So safety and security of our school systems. Level 2 other items are going to be related to early admission, our policy on that, and that was an issue that we've discussed recently. Also clear and present danger and mandated reporter responsibilities for staff. Board review of our calendar. My notes at the not sure what, a little unclear on my notes here. Bobna, do you have? Also, we're going to be looking at our finance issue with regards to delinquent debt recovery and participation in offset program. That's a policy issue that we've discussed previously, but we need to kind of do some research on that. Our policy on community participation at the board meetings, in other areas, how we want to involve the community. And then also on our policy on e-communication, that there's a updated requirements, statutory requirements, and we need to see how those updated statutory requirements align with how we conduct ourselves through policy and just in general practice.
I think the only one that you may not have covered was the emergency crisis plan. Otherwise, I think you got them all.
The number 4 item
For level 1?
for level 2.
Is it different than clear and present danger?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have it here.
The mandated reporter?
You got
Maybe I
it?
just have it wrong on my list
Okay.
here.
All right.
But anyone have any questions about that?
When's the first policy meeting?
It's going to be our September.
September 17th.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Any questions? Any questions about how I'm attacking all
Will
these
we be
issues?
having to keep up with all those press updates and
Yes.
things like
Right,
that?
yeah.
Will that
Yes.
be like, okay.
Yes. Yes. We get those reminders, right?
Do those fall into level 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Well, those are going to be. We have to knock off as many as possible. You know, the level 1 and level 2s are. This is District 96 issues
Okay.
that we've identified that we want to address.
And the ISB has to just float in there too, because they're going to
Right,
keep coming.
they're going to keep on coming, so we need to keep up to date with that. So we're going to try to knock off as many of those as possible throughout the time. But again, we only have, an hour and 15 minutes. So, so again, level 1 gets, but the bulk of the time, we're going to try to get as much of those policy updates, and then try to continually to make progress on the level 2 item.
Any other questions for David? Thanks, Dave. Next, Dave, while you're still here, do you have an ISB report update?
I do not.
Okay. Do we have a PTA, PTO update?
We have a first meeting scheduled, 9/18.
Okay.
September
What school is
18th.
that?
It's all of them.
Oh, there's a,
I guess PTA is the wrong thing. PLT is the right thing, Parent Leadership Team.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
all the PTA, PTOs. So I'll be able to report back after that.
great. Discipline
No
Code
report,
Committee?
no report.
Oh, PLT, that's when?
September 18th,
Is that after the same thing, day after our board meeting?
Yes.
I guess. I didn't really plug them all in yet. I just know the date, but I'll be
Well,
there.
I was just wondering if
So
the pattern
Yes,
was
it
the
would be.
same or
Same.
different.
Same, yeah.
Okay.
Got
I
it.
totally am not. I need
That's way too far ahead.
too far ahead right now.
Schools open
Yeah,
and
just not
kids
gonna get.
and chairs, yes.
All right, the next item on the agenda is Riverside Educational Council. Does the Educational Council have a report? Ms. Gill?
I'll just say the RC has met with, also with Dr. Sean Lewis and Dr. Gannon and Mr. Zach. And it seems more than once, so we also are most appreciative of all the open communication and feel that we are looking at issues together and trying to come up with solutions. We'll be on meeting once a month, and I believe a board member will be joining us at those meetings, and just want to say we are very appreciative of having the opportunity to be heard and so engaging in this dialogue.
Thank you, Ms. Gill.
Could you brief me a little bit on what the Riverside Education Council is?
Gladly. Okay. My name is Patricia Gill. I'm the president of the Riverside Education Council. We are the union for non-certified and certified staff. We are about 200 members. Everyone is in our union except for custodians and administrators. We are a member of the Local 571. So we are a council. There's 24 of our councils in Local 571. Local 571 is a member of IFT, Illinois Federation of Teachers, and our national branch is the American Federation of Teachers. Our logo is Union of Professionals, and we really like that logo. That is something that really is important to us, and we are always looking for professional solutions and just working together with collaboration and doing what's best for kids.
Thank you, Ms. Gill.
Rachel?
Yes.
I did have one other thing on the policy committee. We will be receiving policy language from our law firm with regards to suggested amendment to our policy related to the committee structure, to potentially permit this board to structure themselves as a committee of the whole for the committees in place. But the goal is just to give this board that flexibility, not to come right out and replace it, but just give us that flexibility.
Okay, giving the choice. Okay, very good. All right, thank you.
Have that by September?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, David. All right, the next item of business is our financials, and there'll be a presentation by Mr. Zayed again, District's Director of Finance and Operations, regarding our financial statement as of July 31st of 2013.
He gave it as part of.
Oh, you did already?
Yes.
That's
Well,
it?
Yes, he gave it as part of the dashboard.
Okay,
Nothing
so we
separate.
already went through our financial statements? Did we see it?
The
No?
statements are in, I'm sorry, they're in your packet.
Oh, I thought you were going to do a presentation. My bad. I apologize. Didn't mean to catch you off guard. All right.
But you can.
But I
You
guess,
wanna
I
do
guess
one?
that's to my point about the monthly reports now. As we go forward, will we actually receive a report from you, or will it be just it's in your packet kind of thing?
No, you will receive it.
Okay.
Starting in October, is that what you said?
Sorry.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Did anyone have any questions for Mr. Zayed regarding the financial statement?
I have a question about the agenda. In the past, we actually acted on this. We accepted this financial statement. We don't have to do that? Just
I don't
noticed
recall
that,
they're
sorry.
accepting the financial statement.
It was part of the consent.
It was part of the
agenda.
consent agenda.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
What you have to do is approve the bills that are on here.
Right.
Yep, those are the, so
Okay.
approval
It's just
of
a
the
point of
invoices.
order.
Mhm.
I think that Mary Rose and Dr. Sherman agreed to just break it up, so because there was so much under the consent
Yeah,
agenda,
yeah.
so this was breaking it up.
Okay.
So that is just something that's an
I just
information
don't want to
item.
miss something
we no
important that we
longer have-
legally
we
are
no longer-
obligated.
Yeah, we won't let you do that.
Right, so
Thank
we
you,
no
Art,
longer
for-
have to approve the financials, just the invoices.
Right,
Okay.
right. That was the only
Right.
actionable part.
Got
Okay.
it.
Speaking of, moving on to the approval of general invoices, Schedule A735. Could I like to ask for a motion and second to approve the general invoices, Schedule A735? And go ahead if I can get a motion first, and then I'll explain.
So moved?
Second.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to point out is that Sue just handed out to everyone, there was an additional invoice that was not part of the original packet. It's an invoice for Lakeside remodeling of the Hauser Gym project for $7,500. Just wanted to point out that that's going to be part of the invoices. Does anybody have anything they want to discuss?
Is that a part of
painting.
the
Painting.
painting with
The
That's
Hauser
painting.
project, right.
Yeah.
house projects? So is that supposed to, will that come into the financial status report on the construction?
It could go in the bleacher, it's the bleacher floor refinishing, but I don't think we put the floor refinishing on the Ramesh report. I don't think. I mean, yes, it could go on there. I don't think it's
Or it could
currently
go on
on.
the next one.
Right, I don't think.
No. I'm
She's-
just
he's
saying
to add it.
in general, is this something that's going to be rolled into? Because I would characterize it as being a part of the construction project.
Yes, but I don't think it's
Capital
on here
project,
right now.
No, but it will be, the funds will be used from the construction fund.
Yeah.
Right, so we should add because I think what's on here right now is the bleachers only. I'm not sure the floor is on there either. For sure this isn't, so we should probably just make, for consistency's sake, put that all on there. I'll make a note.
Well, this report is Ramesh's report is dated the 12th, so I assume anything coming in after that may not be reflected.
Yeah, but I'm not sure it was initially, those two items were tagged in there. I need to go back and verify that, but I think to make it comprehensive and complete, it should be.
Yeah, but that's one thing that I would like to be able to track, because in past, I feel like there was so many additional expenses related to our capital improvement project that weren't captured in our report to the board, like window treatments, painting. It seemed like those were extreme, like kind of miscellaneous expenses, but they were adding up in cost. but they weren't tracked in the total
Well,
tracking report.
See, and I think the point of differentiation there is that and Zach, correct me if I'm wrong, but those were executed by District 96 versus somebody that we hired as a sub and a.
Right.
And I'm not saying they
Yeah.
shouldn't be added together, but I think that's where we need to make sure those two mesh, because some of what we were tracking here is what
Goes with the contract.
which goes with the contracts that we approve for the project.
Yeah, and I can totally see the logic for keeping them separate, but for us as trying to track the total cost of the capital improvement project, that we should have a more comprehensive report, or at least additional report that says, okay, here's all the related costs that the district itself has incurred. Yeah, so like the moving costs, bringing back, all that cost.
Okay.
Are they going to be paid out of the same fund?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
right,
so that
right.
is something important to know.
Well, because you've got the cleaning costs aren't on
Right,
there
those
either.
probably have not come up yet, and I anticipate probably next month, that's when those invoices
Right.
are going to be coming out. Okay.
Maybe we should talk about this at the finance committee
Yes,
meeting.
I will.
But the other question too is if this is Ramesh's report and eventually Ramesh is going to roll off of this the district work, and
Well,
we still have these expenses. We know from last year's project, we had these payouts going months and months.
Well, Ramesh
So-
is here for 6 months, so I mean, he'll be here for a little longer
Okay.
to close this out. But
But it'd be nice to just keep that going if possible somehow. But we can talk about it in finance committee.
And then I had a question with regard to the school employees loss fund for 73,000. If I could just get ask for just some background on that.
That's our workers' comp.
Workers' comp.
Insurance. We're in a pool, and the name of the pool itself.
Is
And there's 8 districts that are in that pool. That's our share of the stop loss amount, which is $1 million per claim. That's our share that goes into the pool to pay those claims out.
and that's our one-time contribution to that pool.
Annual contribution.
Annual contribution, yes.
Have we-
Give us a deal on reinsurance.
I was just
Maybe
going
make
to
some phone
ask, have
calls.
we looked into and are we sure that we're getting a deal on this? Is that a good price? I don't know that industry at all.
It's part of a co-op pool, yes.
Okay, good to know. Do we have any other questions? Discussions? Okay. There is one invoice I think was notable when I saw it. I about had a heart attack for the Riverside Golf Club. They're apparently, unbeknownst to me as a member of the public before I was on the board, I didn't realize that there was an annual employee recognition dinner at Riverside Golf Club. The invoice is for $9,216.21. That's crazy because
You missed their dinner.
What?
You missed the dinner.
Well, yeah, I would have anyway, and I had intended to do a later protest, but I was so busy I didn't get around to doing it. But I just want to let you know that this is not, this is taxpayer dollars. It's being a government employee and married to a government employee. This is just not an appropriate expense of funds. I've talked about it with Dr. Sharma Lewis already, and we're probably not going to do this again. It doesn't mean that the staff members.
You're not.
What?
You don't speak for the board.
I'm
We
not
need to
speaking
have-
for the board. Is
we
this
should-
something, as I understand, this is not something that the board has traditionally needs authorization to do. This was
Right.
something that was decided by the past superintendents to do. Correct? This
That
doesn't-
has
the
a
only
very
board action.
long
history.
history in this
But it
district.
doesn't make it right.
So,
And
all
I'm
right, so we
saying
can have
make
that
it wrong.
discussion.
And I'm having the- I'm starting the discussion
I
now.
would respect that whatever's decided, that, that it just isn't decided, that maybe it's being brought up through a committee or a vote on the board, because you know what, it's $9,000, and you know what, we got some agenda item to hire $40,000 for a technology audit. You know what, this is $9,000 that goes to recognize teachers who put a lot of time and effort, and to me it's just a drop in the
Mike,
bucket.
this is not, I'm telling you, as a government employee and somebody who looks at
Okay.
government
That's
officials.
fine.
That's fine.
I'm just
Let's-
letting you know,
we'll
I'm just
have
putting on
that
notice.
discussion. We can have that discussion.
I'm just saying, I'm not going to not
that
approve it today.
debate, and it just not be decided.
There's no decision today, but I'm saying that likelihood, this is not a good expense of funds. This is not only waste of money. It's bad government. This is not BP Amoco. These are taxpayer dollars. And I'm telling you,
BPM would spend a lot more than $9,000 on his employee.
$9,000 is a lot. Do you know, my husband who works for the Village of Riverside, you know how much he gets? Christmas parties, nothing. The only Christmas parties they've had in the past have been paid for by the union or out of personal funds, and the same thing goes for my employer. I work for Cook County, and I'm sad to say that Cook County is being a model here, but it's outrageous, and I think a lot of public citizens would be upset by it, and especially since it's been going on for so long. And when I moved in here 10 years ago, there was a referendum on the table, and there was threats they were going to shut down Blythe School. Meanwhile, they were doing this. $9,000 is $9,000, and I think we just need to be a little bit more conscientious of how money's spent and realize it's taxpayer dollars.
That's your opinion.
Yeah, it's, hey.
I think that's a valid discussion to have. I think we need to recognize our staff, and we should do so in an appropriate way. I agree. I think we can find a way to do that.
And maybe, listen, I'm talking from point of reference from my employer. Whenever we have a dinner, we either have to pay out of personal funds or he pays for us out of his personal funds. And that's the appropriate way government should do things. So, all right. Are we ready to vote?
Okay. Mr. Brockway?
Yes.
Mrs. Gaynor?
Aye.
Mr. Kodama?
Aye.
Mrs. Morello?
Aye.
Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Very good. The motion carries. Moving on to the Apple Computer invoices that were tabled from the 7/16/13 meeting due to the fact that many board members had questions the new administrators could not answer before that meeting. And I'm going to do something a little unique because this was an important matter for the public. I asked Dr. Sharma Lewis to just do a little summary of all the questions that were asked and what her findings were based upon that.
The board had asked us, or compiled a list of questions, probably about 10 to 15 questions on what were the purchases, what were they used for, where are they going to be located, are they for student or for staff use, are there other options for leasing rather than purchasing, is this a one-time expense or is it an ongoing expense, what has been the cost of the Laptop for Learning program, was this specifically for the Laptop for Learning program. So after going back and meeting with Mr. Bettis and Mr. Elanius from our tech department, they itemized all the items that were purchased. These were purchased back in April and May, and they were delivered to the district in June. They had already been opened and inventoried. They were specific to the Laptops for Learning program. We bought approximately 200 new MacBooks for the 5th graders. We also bought new projectors and control boxes and document cameras for Ames, Central, and Hauser. Those were one-time purchases. We bought power Ethernet switches for all 5 of our school. That was also a one-time purchase for the infrastructure. Mobile carts for Hauser.
We purchased the projectors, did you say?
Yeah. Epson projector.
Is that different from the short throw projectors that were installed in the schools?
No, I believe they were the same ones. The document cameras were for Ames, Central, and Hauser, but
Epson projector control boxes, I think, were for Blythe and Hollywood. It's put in place now.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Am I correct on that, Vern? Okay. There were mobile carts for Hauser for 8th grade classrooms. That was also a one-time purchase. There were fiber cables for switches, a one-time purchase for infrastructure, battery backups in all 5 of our schools, and that's an infrastructure cost. We had a yearly subscription for Apple for the operating system as well as the Life Suite, and that covers all the computers in the district and their maintenance costs. We bought 10 iPads and 5 MacBooks later in the spring, and we also bought 2 Apple TVs to test in classrooms. Those were pilot projects to see how they would be working, and Apple TV mirrors your computer, so it's going to be used for instructional purposes, and also cases for iPads. And in addition, which I don't see on here, was additional 200 iPads that were purchased for each of the elementary buildings. Not 200 each, excuse me. The 200 iPads will be divided up among the elementary buildings and be placed on mobile carts, so for instructional use. So this was a compilation of one-time costs, infrastructure costs, as well as devices, and annual costs for some of the devices.
So Laptop for Learning, that's 5th, 6th, and 7th grade?
Is that what that
And
is?
8th, 5th through 8th.
Okay. And the 200 mobile, those are what? Floating around the school?
Are
To
you-
be used by teachers in other grades?
Are you referring to the carts, the mobile
Yeah,
carts?
yes.
Yes, they're used mostly for 3rd, 4th graders in each of the elementary buildings, and they have MacBooks on them. And so the 8th grade MacBooks that were used last year for our previous 8th graders, those are going to be recycled onto the mobile carts so they can be transferred to each building.
So you say there's 200 of those mobiles. The mobile
I think
on
there's
the carts.
probably, and I could, I'm thinking that there's 30 on a cart, so there's probably about 6 carts, 6 or 7 carts.
180, 210.
Right. 2 to 3 per building.
2 to 3 carts per building.
Correct.
So it's about 60 computers per building.
Right.
Okay.
For 3rd and 4th graders.
For 3rd and 4th.
Well, it would be less for Hollywood.
Right.
And it's going to be
Yeah.
one
Mhm.
cut.
So maybe 4 would, went to Central.
Okay.
Yeah, they're divided up.
I have a question. I'm actually surprised to hear that some of this equipment is sourced through Apple. I know that there's lots of other places we could go. Do we have a competitive bidding process for any of this equipment? Because, I mean, I have no idea if the prices we're getting from Apple are awesome or, average or whatever. Some things I would expect us to source from Apple, mainly the actual devices and so forth. So I was just curious if that's something that we have done. Is it something that we could do to have a competitive bid process for some of this equipment? I mean, when you're talking about this much money, although I realize it's a variety of things, when you add it all together, it's significant. Just a thought.
Can we get an answer to that? Or?
Yeah, I was going to ask Zach if he wants to respond.
For an app, only Apple sells the product, so you really can't get a bid on Apple products. If you're talking about, HP.
Power over Ethernet switches. I mean, there's about 6 other things that are not Apple specific that I would wonder if we could potentially see sourcing elsewhere or getting a pretty competitive bid on that, just to make sure that we're getting the absolute best price.
Well, I know on things that we purchased from CDW, if you shop around and you get a price cheaper than CDW offers, they usually match it.
Okay.
So it's really more doing the actual legwork and trying to find other suppliers.
Okay.
Now, if the district decides not to use Apple computer laptops anymore, for instance, they want to explore using, I don't know what else is out there, HP, Dell, any other products, would those be compatible with the Apple TVs and the Apple projectors that we purchased? Or are we now kind of married and locked into the Apple platform for the rest of our
I think we only
years?
bought 2 Apple TVs, so that wouldn't be, that was only $300, $150 each for the Apple TV device. So I don't know if they would mirror to any other device, and I don't
Well,
know if
actually,
that's a fair
Apple
question.
TVs work with anything that has
Anything,
iTunes.
okay.
So
Is that true? And we say, what about the projectors? And
I mean, I'll defer to Zach and Vern.
I don't know enough about technology to know if
Projectors
that.
are all open brand.
Oh, okay, okay. So there's no other concerns as far as, okay, very good. I'm glad to hear that. Do we have any?
And the Apple TV, that's, did I hear you correct? That's just in the kind of test phase that we're kind of.
That's how it was presented to me. If you want to elaborate on that, Vern, would you mind what you
We were
were?
looking at ways to be able to just sync with that device so that the teacher can be somewhere else in the room with a laptop or a student and then project to the Apple projector.
I mean,
Through the tools we currently have.
I think this is as we start adding on with some of this technology. I mean, again, I would like to see some demonstration on how it's going to be supporting the rigor and relevance goal for our curriculum. And so I don't want to be, speaking for myself again, I don't want to be, I don't support just buying these products just for the sake that, well, they're there, so let's try them out and see what it is. I know it's only $150, but $150 here, $150 there, and you start talking, you're in the thousands, and before you know, you're in you're talking about significant money. And so, again, before we embark on those additional investments, I would like to be able to see that as presented, demonstrated, that this is how we're going to utilize them to support that rigor and relevance goal for our curriculum.
And I think we've shared that with you, not only tonight, in our action planning, but that all of our purchases are going to be aligned to instructional goals. However, our instructional goals are going to be laid out for you and shared. Here's what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and what we're going to need to support that. And if it's requiring extra purchases of technology or curriculum or resources, you're going to know the reason why and how we're going to use it, and then also how we're going to evaluate it.
Well, Bhavna, you mentioned just a little bit ago that some of the questions that were posed, some of them dealt with leasing and as opposed to purchasing. Now, is that is there a process that's going to get into that in detail? I mean, I'd like to see the laptop program, kind of thrown up in the air and have the pieces come down and look at all the various moving parts, expenses, how it's used, how the people are trained and so forth. How the teachers are trained, how the teachers train the students, oversight, and all of those things. So I don't think it's, and I understood that there was going to be kind of this top to bottom review. Now, has that been initiated?
I think, in your packet, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit later in the discussion section, we've gotten all that information out to you. We'd like to share it with you, have you review it, and then the program evaluator consultant will come in next board meeting and share with you how they're going to do that. To do that, exactly what you said, that top to bottom review, and outline the process.
All right.
We wanted to give you the literature first, so you could read it and be able to answer any questions when they do come here to present.
Let's reserve that discussion until later because it is on the agenda, and so we'll get there.
All right.
If there's no more questions and no further discussion, I'd like to ask for a motion approving these Apple invoices.
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Okay, Mrs. Gaynor?
Aye.
Mr. Kodama?
Aye.
Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Brockman?
Yes.
And Mrs. Morello?
Aye. Great, the motion carries. The next item agenda is the resolution to transfer funds from the education fund in the next item of business is to request that the board adopt a resolution authorizing district to transfer $5.5 million from the education fund to the capital projects fund and $2 million from the operations and maintenance fund to the capital projects funds as recommended by Mr. Zayed. I would like to ask for a motion and a second that the board adopt such resolutions.
So moved.
Second.
Does anybody want to discuss this?
I have just a couple questions or understanding, I guess I would like to know. Can you do multiple transfers? Is there rules around how many transfers you can do from which fund to which fund throughout the course of a time period?
Well, probably.
I kind of remember this, but I'm not sure.
Well, you can, but in order for me to, I have to have the transfer budgeted and sent to the state. So they have to know what my transfers are going to be this year. So the transfer has to be approved before I can put it into the budget.
And if it isn't, that causes
isn't,
issues.
Well,
for
if you don't approve the transfer, if you want to do multiple transfers, we would have to amend the budget every time we do a transfer.
But so there's no, you can't just, you can continue to do that as long as the state knows. There's no
Exactly. I'll just have to
you can't do one transfer a year and that's the rules of the state.
Ideally, that's what you want to do, because you don't want to keep amending your budget.
Okay, got it. I just didn't remember. And then I noticed that in your notes, there was an issue about we paid out of operations and maintenance for capital projects, which I'm guessing is not the ideal situation that we're in, because you should really pay all the capital projects out of capital projects.
Well, they will be paid out of capital projects. I'll make a journal entry that'll take the expense from O&M to capital projects. The treasurer's office will not allow you to spend out of a fund that has a zero or doesn't have sufficient fund. Although in total, we're funded, proviso doesn't allow that. Every other township doesn't have an issue with that. That's their policy, so.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All right. Let's call the roll.
Yes. Mr. Kodama.
Aye.
Mr. O'Brien.
Aye.
Mr. Perry.
Aye.
Mr. Brockway.
Aye.
Mrs. Gaynor.
Aye.
And Mrs. Morella.
Aye. Great. Next item of business is regarding the impressed fund signatories. District currently has 3 authorized signatories in this account: Dr. Sharma Lewis, Zach Zayed, and Brian Gannon. And we have been talking about making a change to require 2 authorized signatures per check. And can I get a motion and a second to approve the requirement for these 2 authorized signatures per impressed check, please?
So,
A second.
Does anyone want to discuss this?
no, I think it's a good procedure.
Okay. Well said, and the brevity is appreciated. All right, let's call the roll.
Okay. Mr. O'Brien.
Aye.
Mr. Perry.
Aye.
Mr. Brockway.
Aye.
Mrs. Gaynor.
Aye.
Mr. Kodama.
Aye.
And Mrs. Morella.
Aye.
Your argument carried the day.
She has spoken. Okay, we're going to now move on to action items, and we are almost on schedule. I'm very excited about this. Okay.
There was a schedule.
Yeah, well, there's usually recommended times, and we're usually nowhere near it, so I'd say. Okay, the next item of business are the action items, and the first item of business is the personnel report, which includes the 2013-14 appointments of certified staff, 2013-14 appointments of support staff, 2013-14 transfers and resignations. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the staff appointments and transfers for 2013 and formally accept employee resignations as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Does anyone want to discuss this? All right, will the secretary please call the roll?
Sure. Mr. O'Brien.
Aye.
Mr. Perry.
Aye.
Mr. Brockway.
Aye.
Mrs. Gaynor.
Aye.
Mr. Kodama.
Aye.
And Mrs. Morella.
Aye. All right, next item of business are the West 40 applications for occupancy for Blythe Park and Hollywood Schools. State law requires that a signed copy of the occupancy permits be sent to the West 40 Regional Office of Educational, certifying the completion of some of the summer 2013 construction projects. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the West 40 application for occupancy for Blythe Park, Hollywood, and Hauser Junior High Schools as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Anyone want to discuss?
Lisa?
All right. Will Secretary
No,
call-
I just, as an FYI, I did send them to Ramesh to review them as well, just to ensure that we were good to go.
Okay.
So,
All right.
And he said he has reviewed them?
yeah,
You said?
yeah,
You
well, it
did?
was,
Or-
it was today-ish, so he's reviewed them and he'll, just to ensure that tomorrow goes smooth, I wanted his eyes on them as well. I mean, I looked at them
Yes.
too, but I am not, I'm only as good as I am, but it's not gonna be good enough for this, so.
Agreed.
So just that FYI, he took a look at them, and I have not gotten feedback, but I did do that to ensure that we have a double check.
Thank you.
So the certificate of occupancy, this group, was it 40?
West 40.
West 40.
West 40. So they have qualified people to make that inspection along with Ramesh. These are architects.
They have to do the inspection.
By law.
By law, they
theirs,
have to do the
they have to do
inspection.
it.
So Ramesh really doesn't have
Yeah.
anything to do with it, other than to make sure that we're all lined up to get approved.
Yeah.
Actually, they represent the statutory requirement to have inspections, right?
We can only
And in
hope.
fact-
So are they?
We can't
are
verify
they-
what they're operating.
Are they I mean, is this their expertise? I mean, building, construction?
They are
they're-
the government
I mean,
authority under which we have to operate. We don't, we can't speak to what they know or don't know. We assume that they know what they're doing, but we have our own due diligence to make sure that our
Yeah.
buildings are.
So if we deem these buildings to be occupied,
We don't deem them, they do.
They do.
the board has no responsibility with that?
No.
No.
No, okay, so they,
They're on the hook.
Let's put it
They're
this
on
way,
the-
if you had to get your home inspected because of some permitting requirement by the village of Riverside, this is essentially the same, except we're a school, so our authority instead of the village is the West 40 Service Center. So, you know, has the village of Riverside inspector ever missed anything? I imagine probably he has, because I hear stories, you know, Brookfield's the same way. You know,
Is this-
it's just not the, I mean.
is this West 40 unit of government? I mean, are they?
Yeah,
Yes.
they're a subset of
And
the
they
Illinois
are-
State Board of Education.
Okay. So
The
they
creatures
are-
of
Established by law.
statute. Yes.
Yes.
Established by law.
Right, right.
So everybody just, you know, we're just to accept that they know what they're doing.
No, I wouldn't look at it that way.
Nah,
We
we don't just-
hire Ramesh, we hire, you know, Concept 3, we hire people to do the work and to inspect it and ensure that it's done right. This is just the legal stamp that we get because the statute says that we have to do this.
All right. I just,
And then it's our responsibility to keep on maintenance and monitor and, you know, and.
I'm just skeptical about these units of government out there,
Oh.
you know.
Definitely. We
What
don't
is
have
that?
a regional
You're a part of that
superintendent
unit of
anymore.
government,
I mean,
sir.
And where are they on, are they on
Good idea.
Wolf Road and Hillside or somewhere?
Out of some
Yeah.
guy's basement. I don't know. Yeah, probably
I think
no.
they're in
That's just,
Hillside, yeah.
who knows?
Is this the group that we've read about in the paper in the past?
We gotta get there.
Misgivings and
Could have been.
misdoings and things?
Could have been. They're
Yeah,
dime a dozen.
perhaps.
Are we ready to vote? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right, the motion carries. All right, next item of business is the 2013-14 student enrollment policy override. There was a chart, Dr. Sharma Lewis distributed a chart outlining what our class sizes would be this year under the current policy versus if we overrode the class size policy tonight. Under the current policy,
Yeah, take one, please.
20 students would be displaced versus just 2 if we approve the class size policy override. Could I get a motion allowing, thank you, approving the student enrollment class size policy?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Is this a different one? No.
Just an extra copy,
Oh,
same one.
Okay.
Still waiting for my second vote. Anybody?
Do we
Second.
have our
Second, okay.
discussion
Now we can
before?
discussion, no, we have a discussion afterwards.
Okay.
So, now we can talk about it. I just want to say that, Dr. Sharma Lewis, do you want to speak as, we talked about this a little bit, and you were okay with overriding our policy. You want to talk about it a little bit more?
We, the elementary principals, Dr. Gannon and I met yesterday for a few hours and looked at every student and every family that has registered. There's 2 charts here. The first one is the class size under the current policy, the caps. So how many students per grade by school would be displaced? Because the policy is 20 students in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, and 23 students in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So as you can see, we would be displacing 6 school, if we kept the policy as is, we would be displacing 6 students from Ames, 6 from Blythe Park, and 8 from Hollywood. In the class sections.
I'm sorry, could you just clarify, are we talking, when we say displaced, are we talking about new registrants coming in
Correct.
right now, not the current ones that are already being
Right.
quote-unquote displaced?
Yes.
Or quote-unquote, not displaced because of previous board action to change a policy.
Right.
Right? Is
Right.
that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
That's the question I had.
Yeah.
Wait, say that again?
Yes, they're new students.
Just the new students.
Yeah.
And these are displaced from the school that's closest to their home to one that's further away.
Correct, that may have an opening And so what we did was identify by grade level and by school where there are openings. So if we, or if you as a board decided to override the policy, we would not display, well, we would displace one student from Blythe Park due to a parent request, and if, I'm going to ask Ms. Keller that if there's one student from Hollywood, because we decided we were going to stick with 23, correct? Yep.
If that's the number.
Right. So we decided if you would override the policy, we would go for 23 at kindergarten, first and second, and 25 at third, fourth, and fifth. And that would allow all new students to stay in their home school or the school that's closest to their home. But you would have to take action to override the policy. And the numbers that you see are the class sizes and the number of sections at each school.
So my question also is, with any student being displaced from their neighborhood school, I assume, A, the boundaries haven't changed, right?
No.
Okay, and how about the placement of displaced students? Is it still like the next closest school that has an opening? Is that?
That's what we looked at. That's
Okay.
what we looked at, yep.
Okay.
I guess I have some concern about the third, fourth, and fifth grade situation in the override scenario. Because if you've got 25 today in third grade at Blythe or 24 in the others, what happens when they're in fourth and fifth grade? And now we're at 25 and we got to add 2 bodies. And we're at 27. I believe boards in the past, and this board and me in particular, has tried to monitor this class size and feel it's pretty important in how kids learn and their ability to learn. So I'm concerned about overriding to those numbers and what that means for our future, because we've seen kids continue to come in these middle grades. That's something I would throw out there for discussion. That when I looked at this, that was the first, those numbers are the ones that popped out. One is maybe different, but I mean, you're going to start to see at some point, where do we draw that line? And that was why the policy was written. So I know it's not comfortable for every parent, and siblings, there's, each one of those families has a situation. But what do we think about that? I mean, as an ongoing basis. I mean, we don't have to override every grade either. I mean, we could override some and not others.
I agree, Lisa. I have to say, where do you draw the line? You start keep creeping up, and where does it all stop? And I think I was concerned about that, and I think that this is kind of a for now measure, that's something that we talk about referring it to the policy committee, if it'd be class 1 or 2, and to really, okay, we need to look at this in the future, and that we need to come up with definitive guidelines of where we're going to stop.
Well, we do, don't we?
Well, we do. But the thing is, it's not really. It doesn't define a lot. There's not a lot of guidelines and guidance in this issue.
Well,
It gives you numbers, but it doesn't say anything about how you evaluate when you should in situations, and how do you override your policy, and where does it all stop? Do we have a drop dead bottom line number?
So I'll just take this really brief opportunity to state that there was a board level committee convened to discuss this matter, and we talked it over. There was a 2 board members, started out with 2 board members, some parents, and we had brought in staff, administrators, to help us talk through the issue. And work was done, but I consider it unfinished work because the remit of that committee was just to report back to the full board. And this was actually before I was on the board, so it's been a conversation going on for a while. So we reported back to the board at that time, and then the board was going to take it up as a part of policy committee. And so subsequently I joined the board, and I think that there was some policy committee discussion on the topic, but again, my personal feeling is, speaking for myself, that it's an unfinished conversation. So I would suggest that, or make the request that the policy committee put this on their agenda.
Yeah,
you've got a lot on there, but
I missed that. It needed to be on there because the updates that we made to the policy was just to align with current practice, and not necessarily where we wanted to be, what we wanted to be.
Yeah.
So yes, I will need to add that.
We're in a situation, and everything you said Lisa, I agree with, you get, Blythe Park has this problem to a certain extent, although they have a little more room physically in their size to absorb some additional wrinkles. But Hollywood will probably never be able to deal with, high enrollment without displacing students. And it's frustrating for those families. I know personally through experience. So my final thing I'll say on this proposal is that I think the numbers that we're looking at are not out of the range of what's already been approved by boards in the past. I don't think it's going to make be a huge problem. I agree. Where does it stop? I mean, I don't know. If we look at what we have in front of us right now, I think this seems like a reasonable approach. In fact, I'm disappointed that a couple of students will be displaced even under this proposal, but.
Which numbers are you referring to? The ones if we override the policy numbers?
Yes.
Okay. Now I have a question about this too. It was just say that if we decide to override the policy, it's just for the snapshot of what we know today, meaning if anybody else moves in tomorrow, that's it. Nobody else they're going to have to be displaced. Okay, that's what I just want to know. Go ahead, Lisa.
Well, and the other thing to look at in this scenario too, and I always tend to look across the district as well. I mean, you've got 18s and 19s at some schools and 24s and 25s at other schools. So you need to remember that, or I think about equitable across. So, if we continue to heavy loads, not displace, and load classes where kids where they should be, you're going to start to build disparity between class size. And at some point in the past, that was one of the reasons that boundaries were redrawn because of that disparity. So I ask us to think about all those things when we're making override decisions.
Do we have any physical limitations on any of this? For any of these classrooms that are going to be expanded? A student, you put in another desk. Have we looked at that at all?
The one that was made, came to my attention yesterday was at kindergarten at Hollywood, that they're going to have to order another table and some chairs.
So that's the only one?
To my knowledge, yes, but we haven't proposed this to maintenance and find out what currently do we have in stock with extra. I mean, we're talking one or two desks, but.
Just take one from Blythe Park because they only have 17, which is exactly what Lisa was talking about.
That's what I was kind of thinking too. But the moving expenses for that. But and another thing that came up when I was talking about with Dr. Sharma Lewis is we sometimes forget our schools are really geographically quite close together. I mean, I think the farthest apart, if you went from one section to another, you're maybe 2 miles apart. So we're no Naperville or Plainfield. Our schools are quite close together, and I know what a pain it is to have kids in multiple schools. I've been doing that for years. But, you have to kind of weigh and balance it. Lisa brings up a lot of good points, and I honestly don't know. I'm somewhere in between, too, and undecided. I don't know where you guys fit on where to go with this.
All right. I'm similarly. So right now, my question is just with the numbers. One, why is Central decreasing in numbers? So for kindergarten, we went from 2019 to 1918. What's going on there? And it goes across the board. All those.
That's because of the displacements. I assume the numbers.
They don't have any though.
Like where the 4 kids from Hollywood need to go to Central, I'm guessing. That's why the numbers.
Wouldn't they get I guess maybe they have a choice?
No.
No one wants to go, or are we going to shove them over to
Because you look at their total, is that what you're looking at, is the total number?
Shouldn't the basic question is, shouldn't the central numbers be the same as the central numbers in both charts?
No, they're not, because like I'm telling you, Hollywood's 4 displaced kids have to go somewhere. They go to Central. So the number in the bottom chart reflects
less.
They're all different. See, they're all. If you look at the total enrolment, they're
sorry.
all different.
You're right.
Like less. It doesn't make.
All right. What is
Yeah,
going
and
on?
plus the total.
There you
Doesn't
go.
work.
There's 320, for example, at Ames, there's 325, I'm looking at the first chart, keeping it with a current policy. But there's 6 students that would need to get displaced, so that's where they come down. If we didn't displace any of them, that would be 331. So 325 plus 6 is 331. The 156
Yeah, I'm
Six
looking at my
students are
totals of 1,025 versus 1,021 from the top part to the bottom
Yeah, and
part.
actually, you're right, the discrepancy is only at Central, and I know Pete created this document, so Pete is standing in the back. Would you comment
Where is
on the
he?
difference
Hang
in
on
22 students?
Put me on the hot seat. We transferred all that stuff from chart and put it together, and then it's probably an oversight condition.
Okay,
somewhere. It's not that kids disappeared off the map.
Just 23 of them.
23
kids disappeared.
Okay.
Essentially, what the difference is that in one plan, all the kids essentially end up in Central. All the displaced kids end up in Central. And the other plan is they stay where they're at in the reception. Those were either to parent choice to stay where they're at or in the case of again, what was that the student from Hollywood, there's one student we have to.
Yeah, I think it's just it's just a calculation error, because if we displace, it's 20 students, 6, 6, and 8, correct?
Wait,
So
no,
12.
You guys are confusing me. I was right. I'm just sorry. I'm looking at the Central and Hollywood between the two charts. Is it the 3 students that were displaced from Hollywood go to Central? That's why their numbers are higher in the top chart than in the lower chart. That is what I was thinking. You guys convinced me I was wrong.
But it doesn't make sense. though.
Are you-
This is the
I'm
current
sorry.
this is the current policy, and this is if you do the override.
Are you doing this column or this column?
I'm doing these numbers right here. Just to look at the kindergarten example.
See, so I can see this. So three. You increased Hollywood by 3, 20 to 23,
And one got displaced.
And yeah, one to displaced. And so Central goes down by 3. Well, I'm looking at -3 versus 3. All right, but it doesn't work for first grade. First grade doesn't. The logic doesn't work.
And you know what, and this was done
Because those
manually
three
on a
were-
chart that they copied
these-
over, so the
these
numbers
4,
may be incorrect.
But the Central work a little.
Yeah, first grade doesn't work
The totals
exactly
may-
unless it's getting students from some other school. So I don't know.
So,
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. You're right. Anyway.
Now.
So how would you
And then
decide
yours is
if there was still, like, for instance, in Hollywood kindergarten, there was one student that had to be displaced? How would you decide? Would it be the person who registered last
Yeah, right.
would
Good
get
question.
kicked to the side? Okay.
And when people were calling, they were asking, and so our registrar, Mrs. Schöneman, did say to them, would you be okay if your child at kindergarten, specifically at Hollywood, be displaced? And one parent did say they would be okay being placed at Central.
Okay, so that'd be the first person to go. Now, what about after that?
Would that be the person? I'm sorry. Would that be the
That's
person?
right.
Or just the last person?
Yeah, and I can't answer, I don't have that
All right.
information.
See, that's a
I don't
problem
know if
where
that
we
was the
don't-
last person.
We
or
don't,
that-
we need policies to give us guidance about, this
Right.
is how you deal with the displaced
Well,
students. You give priority
right,
to
right,
those who
right.
have, you know, who
And
have
that
a
was all
sibling.
discussed.
Right,
That
like
was all discussed in the
Yes.
past, so.
Well, and this is also the risk that you run if you start deviating from policy. All of a sudden, you have one deviation. Now it's a whole mass
Yeah.
deviation of from the policy, and so it just becomes a frustrating,
Yeah, it gets
challenging issue
messy.
for us, and it becomes messy. And do we make that just the one exception? Do we just say, look?
I think we try to keep the kids closest to home, and if that means overriding the policy with, then I would vote for that. I would support that.
But the other question is it all or nothing? Is there portions that, is there grades that are in a different situation than others? Do you know what I mean by
That's
that?
what I was
Like,
thinking too.
we don't have to override for all grades. You could override for,
Well, we differentiate between kindergarten first and second versus
Right.
third, fourth, and fifth
Right.
in our class size policy.
So basically, it would impact those grades in which there would be displacements. So like third grade, well, pretty much
Well, in
everything but
third-
second grade. No, the other thing I have a hard time, I'm sorry, Randy, I didn't mean to interrupt, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm confused. And
Get in line.
I'm not, could somebody kind of sum this up for us, or kind of brief?
Well, I would say
Could
one brief
bring
historical
this to-
fact is that these class size policies and correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, the numbers are developed from the educational professionals who say these are the kind of ideals of what the size should be. I mean, would you agree? Would you say that ideally we want to be 20 and below, or do you not agree with that? Do you just say we want small classrooms as best as possible, and that's it, or?
I think small classroom sizes are ideal from a management standpoint, but I think instructionally, you're still going to provide the same quality of instruction, whether you have 30 kids in a classroom or 25 or 20. You know, that quality of instruction, that's what we're really looking at. I think that's
Especially
what's
20 to 23 or 23 to 25. I mean, it's...
Yeah, I wouldn't see there is a difference between 24 to 26, 28. I don't see that being a big difference. Yes, there's a difference between 20 and 28.
I think there's a real big difference too, as far as depending on the nature of the kids in the class. I mean, kids are kids, and there's going to be some kids who are going to have greater needs than others, and are just more high maintenance than others, and especially in kindergarten, those early grades are really going to, they're a lot more needy than the later grades.
And that's why there was a differentiation between the kindergarten first and second and third, fourth,
which
and
makes
fifth.
sense.
And so there is some, and yeah, when you think about it, what's the big deal between 20 and 22? But it's there was some guidance provided from from the educational professionals that let's target 20. I mean, I would hope that it's just not board members making that recommendation. I mean, most of us don't have that educational professional background, so I mean, I kind of defer to Dr. Charma Lewis, to Bryant, to Dr. Gannon, to our educational professionals. You know, where do we say that, does it matter? Does it matter? I mean, that's what I would like to get some feedback, some input.
And Brian, you're welcome to comment. I think we all decided as a group yesterday that these are really good class numbers. The way, if you overrode the policy in that bottom column, those are still small enough class numbers. Comparatively speaking, if you look at neighboring districts, I think we're still very, very low.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I think the research out there will show, that the number one indicator of student effectiveness is teacher effectiveness in the relationship with the teachers. So, within that, there are some parameters where you wouldn't want classes to get too big because the teacher is not able to be as effective. But I don't necessarily see these numbers, in my mind, as reaching that plateau, where there would be a big impact on the teaching and learning.
Yeah, and because I see this as a stepping stone to guiding us on how we're going to be revising our policy on class sizes and student assignment. And so if we say yes to all these overrides, then I'm going to look for some recommendation about where is that plateau. We need to know that. And so
Well, right, because if 25 is the plateau and we raise it to 25, then every single kid that shows up that's supposed to go to Blythe next year is not going to Blythe.
That's
So
it.
at some point, you have to say, where is it? Or is it not? Is it 30 or whatever that number is?
Or is it just
And
about effective teachers that have that great relationship and we have the resources? And is that what drives us?
That's always
Well,
been
and
a
there's
huge
always
priority in
been
this
the
district.
conversation that, yes, the neighborhood, and I vacillate back and forth, but the neighborhood schools are great, but all of our schools are great too. So, how do we come to that happy place where we find that right number that is good for all? And it's a struggle every year. So I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer, but we've seemed to always struggle with what that number should be. Do we override it? Do we not override it? I'm struggling myself. I don't know.
I think our recommendation as an administrative team would be to keep the kids in their home schools.
Okay.
And if we, decide what the top number is, and then have new registration come in, we'll work together to find out, what's the closest school, who's got the most openings, as far as, reaching that class size. But I think right now I think our priority is to keep the kids close.
And the other thing I'm noticing too, I think that I'm looking specifically at kindergarten. We're really kind of close to 20, and I'm thinking about how many new registrants are going to come in, and we're going to have to put them somewhere. So we might want to keep those, the numbers of the other schools kind of, where they're at, so that we have somewhere where we can put these people. And granted, we can override it, but I know it's tough. I'm not comfortable overriding our policy either, because there's been so much discussion about in the past, and this is a priority of this district, is to keep as low class numbers. And now we're getting into murky water, and it's nerve-wracking a bit.
Do I understand that's at the top, there would be 20 students that would be displaced?
Right, correct.
And so 6 students that would live in the Ames neighborhood would have to go somewhere else. And likewise with Blythe Park and 8 at Hollywood. All right. Down below, there's only 2 that would be displaced.
If we override the policy. I mean, what's our choice here? I agree with all the long-range planning, but guess what? There's no long-range planning or suggestion on what to do tonight. We have to do something in the short term, and to me, it makes sense to just override the current policy. Now, whether we do that next year or we keep kicking this can down the road, we just can't, fine, go ahead, let's not vote and not override, and then we displace 20 people. And I don't like that. I say we just move and start voting.
All right, Michael has
I mean,
spoken.
Well, not as succinct as Lisa.
Yeah, the immediate request is for 1 exception, and so we're talking about
Lots of
20
exceptions.
exceptions.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well,
So that's kind of like the first question. Do we want to go? I mean, or the first question is, do we grant that exception, and do we grant 19 other exceptions?
I'm for the override. Not that we're
Are we
voting.
voting?
No.
No, kind of.
Expressing my opinion.
So
I'm
we
ready to vote. I'm with you,
Yeah,
Michael.
let's vote. Let's kick it.
are we doing voice vote? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in opposed, say no. All right, the motion carries. We have approved the student enrollment policy override. Moving on. All right, next.
Can I just clarify?
Sure.
You've overridden the policy, but you haven't established kind of a plateau.
Mhm.
So would it be, like, I'm just looking at Hollywood right now, and you've got 20, we said 23. Could we do 24, and that way all of the kids can stay? However, if there are any new registrations, we have to move them to the school closest to them, either Ames, Blythe, or Central.
Well, did you say the one parent was okay with being displaced?
Yes, and she's just looking at me right now and saying she was not.
Oh, she's changed her mind?
It was just a note. They register at the district office, so it was just a note by the district office staff saying it might be okay going to Central PM. And I talked to the parent at kindergarten registrations, and she indicated that she was very hopeful she could go to Hollywood, though she understood if Central PM, Hollywood wasn't an option. It might be okay, but that doesn't mean that that should automatically be her.
I'm a little concerned about that because we've already voted on it as proposed.
So you want to keep it as is? Okay.
Let's keep it as is
Okay.
because we've already voted. I don't know, how do we
And
unravel all of that?
And you know what? And I don't think that parent was the last parent to register. So that's what we have to look at.
Okay.
You had asked me that, so.
Okay,
If I would just make one comment on this.
Sure.
Rachel, you started by saying how close our schools are and so forth. I think that's true with the one exception being Hollywood is on the other side of the divide. And that divide is Highway 171, 40,000 vehicles a day, which I'm very concerned about. So when I see 8 students that would have had to be displaced from Hollywood on this side of First Avenue, I've got a real concern with that.
oh, understood, I agree. First Avenue is frightening. Okay, moving on. Next item of business is revised 2013-14 school calendar, changing the Institute Day on the original calendar from Friday, May 2nd, 2014 to April 28, 2014. Reason being, Hauser teachers will be involved in the 8th grade Cougar Advance and would be unable to participate in any professional development activities on May 2nd, 2014. Such, administration is asking us to change the institute day. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the revised 2013-14 school calendar reflecting the change of the institute day from 4/28/14 to 4/20 to 8/14 instead of 5/2/14 as presented?
Second.
Can I just ask if, what happened in the past with this scheduling?
I don't think it was scheduled. It was just the Cougar Advance there was never a conflict with Institute Day. I think the way the calendar landed for the Institute Day, they had already scheduled Cougar Advance.
What's this Cougar Advance? What's that?
That is when they go to the Northern Illinois campus, the 8th graders.
No,
with
I
staff.
think it's actually Bradford Woods,
Oh,
which is
Bradford Woods,
the
okay.
Indiana University.
So, am I thinking of Laredo Taft?
Yeah.
Sorry. So they do a overnight, 3 days away to talk about like drug prevention and alcohol prevention, and they go away with teachers. So teachers would be involved with that, and they wouldn't be able to participate in the Institute Day, which is the staff development day.
Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Okay, the motion carries. Next item of business is the second reading of board policies. Several policy updates were presented to the board by the policy committee in the June meeting. Policies were preliminary approved as presented and posted on the website for public review prior to final adoption. Can I get a motion and a second that the board adopt the proposed policy amendments as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Does anyone want to discuss any of the proposed changes to these policies?
These are going to become actual policies now
Yeah, we can
if
check them off
if this
We
gets
can send it
passed.
to ISB. We actually adopted your policies.
It's only taken a year or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Motion carries. Okay. The next item on the agenda are discussion items on the technology program evaluation Riverside Brookfield Area Property Tax Appeals Cooperative. Dr. Sharma Lewis is going to tell us about both these items and allow the board members to ask questions and discuss these matters. These items will both be action items on September's agenda. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The first one is the technology program evaluation. You have 2 packets in your board packet. One is an infrastructure technology review, and one is an instructional technology review. The infrastructure one is the one that we'd really like to focus on, as far as we've purchased a lot of equipment in the past few years, and we want to make sure equipment meaning devices and servers, and as you saw from the last statement, projectors and wiring. We want to make sure that, as we stated in our earlier presentation, that our infrastructure is meeting the needs of our instructional needs and our professional needs in the 21st century. So we wanted to, we've looked at asking an outside consultant to come in who has an area of expertise in technology infrastructure, review the current infrastructure that we have, looking at our current operations, making sure that all the processes and procedures in place are supporting the instructional and professional needs, such as our help desk system. That's one example of an operations. Looking at our staffing to making sure that we're appropriately staffed. Looking at our new construction, making sure that everything in our new construction was up to speed and that everything is aligned to what our current infrastructure is indicating. And then also looking at a sustainability plan. So what we currently have, doing a 3 to 5 year plan out as far as purchases, upgrades, maintenance, repair costs, and then possibly looking at also IT security that supports our curriculum and student management. So those are the 6 areas that they would be looking at in that infrastructure. That's a pretty detailed plan. We met, Zach, Brian, and I met with Art and Lisa last week with Client First. They're a company that focuses in this, and we'd ask them to come back and give you a presentation so you can ask specific questions of what they'll be doing, how they'll be doing it. Their proposed timeline was 4 to 6 months. They'd be coming in and looking at our buildings, interviewing our current tech staff, and examining what we currently have and looking at our procedures, and then coming back to you possibly in January and giving you recommendations on how to move forward. The instructional gap analysis, we are also looking at internally, as you saw with our action plan, is what are instructional technology guidelines. We'd like to have you look at that, but that's not an area of urgency right now. We think we can do that with our current leadership team and our current staff, and just look at what are the curriculum goals, what are we currently doing to meet the needs, and then how are we incorporating Common Core in those plans. But I think we'd like to meet with staff first, meet with principals, see how they're using the technology and what they're using it for, and then come up with our own guidelines. And if we need to look at outside services, we can do that. So both of those documents are in there for your review. And the Riverside Brookfield area property tax appeals, Zach and I met about a month ago at Riverside Brookfield High School with an attorney from Franzik and Sullivan, and he specializes in property tax appeals. And so all of the taxing bodies in Riverside and the village, the library district, the high school, ourselves, and I think it was at the mall. It was a mall. Those representatives got together. This particular attorney presented to us that when there is a property tax appeal, obviously it affects all of the taxing bodies. So we would pay into a co-op, and that he would address those property tax appeals. So it would save costs. So we wouldn't each have to go to our attorneys to address it. It would just be through one attorney. So that draft proposal is in your packet for you to review and then take action on at the next meeting.
Have we done that in the past? I thought that.
No, well, what have we done in the past?
No, but I thought that.
No, we just used the Marika.
What?
No, but I thought that.
I don't think we combined efforts.
Or
I
did
don't
we
recall.
combine with RB only? I thought that there was a
Like on the
mention of
Carsons?
combining with RB.
Well, we had a settlement,
Carsons.
we had a settlement from Sears and.
Carsons.
Yeah, that was a whole separate.
Yeah, but that
But
was.
did we
attorney.
do that on our own, or I thought that was in cooperation with.
I don't know how.
I
don't
thought
know
that
what
I
frame
remember
of
Dr.
reference we're working
Lambertson
from.
mentioning something with RB.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm.
I do
all
too,
wrong.
but I don't know how.
But the
it was
courts
sorted.
may have just combined some of those challenges.
Right. I mean, what have we done in the past?
I don't know. This was the first meeting that I was invited to. We did get a property tax appeal in the first week of July, and I had forwarded it to our attorney. So this invitation came to us a couple weeks later.
And that
so our
was-
attorney was handling that one, and we had all gotten
That
the
was
same
for
one.
the golf club.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the one thing.
And they're top 10,
you know,
right?
what,
The
you know,
country club is it top 10?
Top 10.
The Pins,
Pins.
taxpayers.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
why can't Hodges and Luisi handle our?
They can.
All right, but then you're saying, yeah, fine, you'll pay X amount by going to, I don't know off the top of my head, let's just say, yeah, they'll charge us, 20,000, whereas a cooperative will pay 10 and save 10 is what you're saying.
And what we're hoping for is, with the combined effort that
We're not redoubling
we have a little
efforts and
more
it-
leverage, a little more,
Right.
Yeah. No, that seems to
I would
make
hope.
sense.
Right.
I think it sounds like a good idea.
So we don't know if this is the first time that they've attempted to
I don't know.
unify a
Yeah.
group of affected.
Right, it's just something
Agency.
that, went up to Cedarburg, Wisconsin, I guess.
So who initiated this? Was this District 208
Correct.
initiated this?
It's not a bad idea.
All right, I had one question about the technology audit. I know it falls under the statutory minimum as far as requiring it for it to go out to bid, but is that something we can benefit from in submitting it for bid to see if there's other options out there? I always like options.
Sure.
To see do we have time to do that, and can we do that prior to, at least, I know it may slow up things that we may not be able to hire somebody immediately, but to see kind of, I don't know enough about what a technology audit should cost and what other companies may have to offer, meaning that could we do better for our dollar in that?
And we have researched just the hourly rate of those consultants. It's approximately $150, and that is the average going rate of
Okay.
technology consultant. And that was itemized in there. But if you would like me to, I'd be happy to.
Either way, this will be an actionable item that we will vote on in September to see if we want to move forward with this.
Well, the action I think we were going to be, my understanding is whether to hire this particular firm. Is that correct?
We could do it
Okay.
that way.
In September.
Just for the audit, for the.
Just for the audit, yes.
Right, in September from now.
No, in September. It's just a discussion right now.
But this is the time to talk about looking for perhaps other bids or other
Right.
other
Maybe
firms,
not-
other
Aren't we
expertise.
I mean, we're going to be approving a budget soon, aren't we?
Yes.
In
Right?
theory.
And so this would adjust the budget, right? All at the same time.
Would this
September-
be in time, would this be available in time, the results of this kind of study being available in time to affect the 2013-14 budget? Would it be for
You mean to do the audit or the results of the audit?
the results of the audit?
No, it would be for next year's budget.
That's what I thought.
Okay. No, this is just, yeah.
Does that make
Just
sense,
to hire
David?
somebody to the audit.
What have we done in the past? Have we ever done an audit before or not?
Probably not.
I don't know, you guys tell me.
Well, where is this,
No?
so this is, we're talking about, at least for this, this bid, it's 20,000, right? For the technology,
Yes.
where's that money coming from?
It would come from the ed fund.
For the ed fund?
It would come under purchase services.
Wait, one more question. I was confused. I saw that there was two different bills in here for 20,000. I interpreted that what you said before was at 40,000. There were more
Right,
than one phase?
there's one that
Right.
supposedly going to tell us what we have, and the other
Right.
one is a little bit more on the curriculum side, from my understanding. You know what, Rachel, I'll go back to your comment when you took exception to the Apple invoice about why we're spending all this money, and I think that was a fair question, and I think it's opening the discussion of what are we doing with Apple and where we're going with this program, and I think it's a discussion that I hopefully think will be ongoing. I think we need to answer that question before we do, in my opinion, that we do any kind of technology audit and spend $20,000.
Is it 20 or is it 40?
20 for this
20?
aspect.
20
There's
for
two.
like-
There's one for 20
And two.
for like infrastructure,
Got
and
it.
another one for curriculum. I
Curriculum.
would just say that's how I break
So
it
it's,
down.
yeah, it's essentially, it's 40.
So we need to do what first?
He's looking whether we're
Curriculum.
going to go with Apple before we do a technology audit. I don't know. I think it could go either which way. Could this technology audit help us determine whether Apple is the way we're going, or do they have a recommended course of action of where else
If
we
I,
should
if
go?
I may, Lisa and I were in attendance. I don't think that this audit will just tell us where we're at and what kind of recommendations we can go with. I don't think it may give us a recommendation of Apple or alternatives to Apple, but it isn't really focused on trying to make a decision like that. And
I understand
I don't
it.
think we would make that
Right.
decision. We would have to make some decision like that before we entered into this audit.
Right.
I don't really, in fact, thinking about it, there shouldn't be. It would help us make that decision if that decision wouldn't feed into this decision.
Right.
Is the way I see it.
Well, let me see. How do you see it? Why do we need this?
I think this will help us really understand what we have, and where we have gaps, and where we have, maybe surplus. Just I don't know that, or personally feel at this board level that we have a handle on, where we're at with the technology, at least from the infrastructure side. I also do believe that we need to do the curriculum piece, but I understand or defer to the administration to see how we prioritize that
Isn't that
conversation.
what pressing need?
The curriculum?
The lack that we've been seeking as a board, or questioning, where's the demonstration of the rigor and relevance in terms of the implementation of this technology investment that we're making? We want to see it demonstrated. We want to see
So we
that
had the presentation, that's part of our strategic goals that we just had presented tonight. And then, so again, I'm going to defer to you on specifically what infrastructure questions are out there. maybe you can sum them up better than I can.
Sure, and I think, in talking to staff and in talking to the current technology staff too, I think we have some things that we could be doing better. And I think we look for ways to make things more efficient. For example, our help desk. We don't have an actual help desk system, so when there is a problem with a device or with something not working or support needed for a teacher instructionally, there is not a system in place. We've kind of created one now that will go to a help desk district96.org, and it'll be, it's a printer issue, it's a projector issue, it's an instructional issue. I think we need to monitor those a little bit better. I think we need to look at our servers. Do we have the appropriate servers to support the devices that we need? I'm not a box and wire person, so I can't answer those kind of questions. So I think that's why we need to go to outside services and look. I think for the instructional side of things, I'd like to really sit down and meet with staff and meet with principals and find out exactly what you're saying, David. How are you using the curriculum? How are you using the technology to support the curriculum? What specific guidelines do you need from us? What is every fifth grader walking in with, and what should they be walking out with? What are the parent expectations at home? How is that curriculum tied to the homework level at home? And what's the troubleshooting or the help desk at home? Can you log into a help desk system from home if your child's having trouble with it? I think we need to look at the support base of things before we look at the I think we need to do it concurrently, but I think that we, between Brian and I and with Vern and with our current technology teachers that we have, we can sit down and interview staff and put together, like we talked about, that 21st century, think tank team, and find out what are our needs and what do we need to move forward. How are we using the technology, and what specifically do we need instructional wise and professional development wise? I think on the infrastructure side, I don't know if we have the staff or the expertise in district to answer those questions.
But isn't that after the team gets together and assesses, collects all the feedback, where's the frustrations, how are we using this, stuff like that? Isn't that when you are best able to talk to the consultants, to have the most intelligent conversation with the consultants? So what I'm saying is, why isn't the team being established first and having them go through their assessment process and then engage the consultant?
Because I think they're going to look at
Because they're
our
just
actual
looking at capacity,
systems.
right?
And they're looking at our systems. Do we have the efficient system in place to support what we want to do?
But we don't know what we want to do because we haven't had the team.
It's a chicken or the egg question.
Well, can I ask a question? Has there been, who's servicing our servers now?
They're being done in-house, correct, Vern?
Being done in-house, okay. Have we had problems with our servers in the past based upon the usage at current time?
I'd say minimal.
Minimal?
My problem is, either way you slice it, you're asking to spend $20,000 to $40,000 to look at that. And I think, I'm sorry, Matt Elenius, does a lot with the box and wires and server capacity. Couldn't he answer those questions? And I look at that. We came in and we hired a director of finance operations and a director of academic excellence, and to take on these roles and to put the principals, back in the classrooms. I think a lot of this can be done internally instead of spending $20,000 to $40,000.
I do believe, I agree with you to some extent, but I do believe that our technology team is being stretched already. I mean, we talked about how many devices we have and how much technology is in the school district now. I mean, Vern could probably opine better than I can, but it does seem like, for the number of staff that,
right.
There's a lot of support that is needed for that. At the same time, though, I guess where I struggle with is just the timing of this all. We're spending a lot of money, whether it's on capital improvements with, new needed leadership, administrators, science programs, updates and everything like that, and, can we just, is this an absolute critical need? Can we not put this off? Can we not spread out our spending a little bit and just deal with some of the issues that we've already invested money into and see how it goes,
Yeah.
That's one question I put out to
Right.
for discussion.
You know, I point, I mean, you sent out a nice chart about the amount of spending per pupil and everything and that, you know, test scores and math scores remain, you know, relatively flat. And I remember when Liz Whaley came in and showed us how, what a flipped classroom is and what people are, oh, wow, that's really great. Well, we don't know how many teachers are doing a flipped classroom. We haven't put that, you know, maybe we make it a requirement that, you know, once every trimester they do one flipped classroom. I think a lot of this capacity, you know, I believe this money can go to support teachers or go to support anywhere or not spend it. I just think there's a lot of questions that we can ask internally before going out and looking at a consultant at this time.
I agree with that, Mike. I really do. I think there's some real value in engaging the teachers and the administrators and some of the parents and residents of our community that really know all of this stuff, this tech stuff, you know, that perhaps we don't all have to know about it. But I think if, rather than just throw it out to a consultant and have them spit something back to us that may be generic or may not be something that we would utilize. But if we're involved in the process and we have our top people and parents and maybe some residents involved, I think we could get to it and end up with a much better outcome and, you know, engage the community and save some money.
Well, you know, and as in chiming in with you guys, is why I see this is generally what happens with consultants is they recommend spending more money. You need to upgrade and you need to buy more and you need to buy more. Spend,
Yep.
and it becomes the bottomless pit there. I think, so the infrastructure, I think we've all discussed and think that's not needed. But what about the curriculum technology aspect? The other, I call it the other phase,
Yeah.
the other portion of this. Do you?
Yeah, I defer to David's point that, you know what, maybe it's needed, but how critical it is. I mean, we've spent a lot of money on capital improvements, on staff, on this and that, and at some point we just kind of let the leadership team kind of do what they're supposed to do and see what happens, and if we need to revisit it, you know, down the road, that's okay with me. But I think the technology, whether it's curriculum or technology, I think begins with the teacher. And I think a lot of times what, you know, hopefully that with principals more in the classroom, they get the chance to see if teachers are really teaching the curriculum and if who's using technology. And I think that can be done at the leadership level and at the principal level without spending $20,000 or $40,000.
Well, and I would also say if you start there and we see gaps, then maybe the gaps deserve some outside attention. If there's a gap that we can't answer or a need that we really
Gets supplemented.
Right. I mean, and then we say, okay, we need this person to really answer a very specific question that we can't get to. Either side.
Right. I mean, you know, this is just discussion, and we can, you know, bring it up for a vote in September. But I think I would need a lot of convincing.
Yeah, I would suggest that we develop a working group, and we have a instructional side and we have a technology side, and the two are working kind of independently but in concert as well, and they come up and we're not spending $20,000 or $40,000. We're doing it in-house and with the help of our residents.
I agree. I think we could do it. I think we could do it in-house too. And I think that we should look at the Apple program first. And it can be, I don't want to say it's easy, nothing's easy, but just, you know, sorry, Brian, I'm volunteering you because you just happen to be in my line of vision. But is Brian going to classroom to look and see what's happening? Is everybody, the fifth graders in Ames, using consistently with the fifth graders at Central and going to school and seeing how they're using it? And coupled with, at the same time, calling up, you know, Oak Park and saying, what are you guys using in your classrooms there? CPS is not the standard we should follow, but just calling up, you know, figuring out what are other districts doing. It just requires just some kind of, legwork here and trying to figure out let's figure that out, how we're using it, and let's figure out how we should maybe looking to see what other options we have and how we can better this program. And I agree. I think we could do this in-house too. So this has been a very lively discussion. I appreciate
Well, it's
everything.
also, we do have other fellow school districts that we can also, talk to. And
Absolutely.
have conversations with our high school as well. What best practices are they employing at their districts? And so we have that as resources. I don't know, I defer to Bob and to Vern and to our leadership on whether or not we have the skill set in-house or not. But I go back to my earlier point about, we're implementing so many changes right now and everything like that at some point we just need to start, incorporating all those changes into our culture without adding more change to it and more costs. Let's find our glide path and then look at where we are, assess where we are, and then decide what other resources do we need to supplement as we go forward.
Great.
All right, so what's our action? Are we?
No action.
No action.
No
No
action.
action, we're
We're
going to
just discussing.
September. All right, very good.
We're just as a foreshadowing of things to come. Okay. All right. Moving on. Next item on the agenda is just our future meeting dates. Oh, we're way past schedule. September 3rd, 2013 is
Not
the
bad,
Finance
Rachel.
Committee meeting.
Yeah, you did a nice job. You've done all right.
Oh, thanks. Adopt the budget draft and post for 30 days at 7 p.m. at the Learning Resource Center at Hauser Junior High School. September 17th, 2013 is the Policy Committee meeting at 6 o'clock in the Learning Resource Center at Hauser Junior High. September 17th at 7:30, our business meeting, also in this room. And October 1st is our first Education Committee at 7 o'clock in the Learning Resource Center. And October 15th, budget hearing and regular business meeting at 7:30 in the Learning Resource Center at Hauser Junior High School. And TBD, follow-up meeting with Jeff Cohn, ISB, follow-up.
Do we have a date on that yet, or not?
We do not.
Any available dates? Is that what we're gonna? Is that the next step for them? Is just to give us some available dates?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I had given you guys 11.
Yeah, and we read like
November
the
11th.
November dates.
Right,
Yep.
there was
Yeah.
a date. I didn't
Yeah,
respond.
Lisa,
Okay,
thank
I
you.
will, sorry.
Yeah.
I think
11/11?
I think I responded.
11, 11, 12, and 13.
What day is Veterans Day? Okay.
11.
Oh, it's 11th. Oh, it's on Veterans Day? Okay.
So 11th, 12th, or 13th.
All right, so we're supposed to respond to Sue, right? Or
11th, 12th.
Or one of you.
Juanita?
The 15th, I have at least tentatively scheduled the policy committee, correct?
Say that again.
The what day?
On October 15th? Is that, or is that not the third Tuesday?
No,
No,
it
that's
is.
a regular
It
business.
Oh, that
is, yep.
is.
So there's a policy
should
meeting
be.
right before.
It is
on
at
that.
Sorry about
6
that.
o'clock,
Yep.
right?
6 o'clock, yes.
On October 15th.
Sorry about that, Dave.
And then when is the rededication? Is
October 15th.
October
yeah.
15th.
We'll have the
4,
policy at
5,
the
6,
dedication.
7:30.
Okay. All right, moving on. Could I get a motion to adjourn into closed session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, including hearing testimony on it should be a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district determines validity, discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed, whether the purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes is mandated by section 2.06, and student disciplinary cases.
Before we vote on that, can we get we didn't get an enrollment report, we always get an enrollment report.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was what
So
included.
can we
Was
just
it- this
get
was-
that?
This is the
Email.
enrollment report
Right.
that we have pulled together at this time. Yeah.
I would
No,
like
with,
to
like,
know
the-
But
how many.
you're used to the one with the class, the homerooms.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we are at 1,605 kind of
I
students.
mean, I know
Yeah,
there's been
that
a
will
lot
come
of
next meeting.
registration going on. I'm
But can we
curious to
disclose
know-
that, because you're disclosing, no, you're not disclosing.
No, you
class-
can-
Yeah, you're right, it's,
I
you're not
just wanna know
identifying
year
class
over
assignments.
year. How many, are we flat, up 10%, down 10%,
And this one doesn't
whatever.
show anything to do with.
We're up
with-
total enrollment.
We're at 1626 right now.
Wow.
What's that?
1626.
Which is compares to what? I can't remember.
Last
I
year
remember
was
it was
16.
It was like
03?
just over 16.
Just over 1600.
Yeah, so it's high.
We can maybe send that to him.
Busting
We
it. If
can
we
send
could
it to you
just
via
email?
email.
Yes,
That would be
please.
great.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
So I'm so moved on the motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
All right. This meeting's adjourned.